Chapter 496. Looking at the two knights who suddenly appeared in front of him, Noah was a little surprised. "Why are you here?" "Huh? Why?" Erica spat out a powerful voice that reminded one of a lion's without turning her head. The corners of her mouth also curled up slowly. "Although it's okay to answer you now, it's rare for us to make such a grand entrance. Why don't we let the clown back down first? Please wait for a moment." Liliana closed her eyes for a moment before opening them abruptly. "It's not up to you to deal with a group of despicable evil magicians." Facing a group of magicians who had the absolute advantage in numbers and were at least dozens of times their number, both Erica and Liliana appeared to be at ease and didn't panic at all. It wasn't because they were backed by the 7 god-slaying kings in the world, but because they were confident that they could absolutely defeat the enemies in front of them. Erica Browntree. Liliana Kranikar. The two prodigies of Italy's Red Copper Black Cross and Bronze Black Cross were going to show off all of their powerful strength and strong hearts here, proving that they were not just pretty on the surface. Looking at how Erica and Liliana were at ease and didn't take them seriously at all, many irregular evil magicians were infuriated. However, some of them also heard Erica and Liliana's words and couldn't help but waver. "King? Did they just say king? Could that man be?" Without giving the group of magicians time to react, Erica and Liliana's slender bodies spurted out an extremely impressive amount of spell power, bathing their bodies in spots of dim light brought about by the waves of spell power. "Steel Lion and Lionheart King, as my ancestor, please listen to the oath of Knight Erica Browntree. I am the successor of the Horn Flute, the descendant of the Black Warrior. If my heart doesn't yield, my sword won't break. Lionheart King, the essence of struggle is now in my hands. The time for the duel has come, Lionheart King, my wings, the steel that forms the phantom blades, Grandmaster Silversmith, grant me strength." Melodious words echoed from the two girls' mouths like a symphony. Wang. 2 magic arrays, one red and one blue, immediately appeared in front of Erica and Liliana's outstretched palms. In the next moment, 2 cold weapons appeared in the center of the magic array and fell into the hands of the two girls. What fell into Erica's hand was a long sword as slender as a western sword and as sharp as a knight's sword. It was a famous weapon called the Lion King's Heart, which was Erica's only weapon and favorite sword. What fell into Liliana's hand was a silver-white military knife. It was called the Grandmaster Silver Craftsman, and it was a weapon that was no less valuable and powerful than the Lion King's Heart. It was said that the Lion King's Heart and the Grandmaster Silver Craftsman were originally a pair of magic swords. Their former owner was a paladin who stood at the top of Italy and was no less powerful than Paul in terms of power and status. Erica and Liliana had each inherited the pair of weapons since they were young, allowing the 2 famous magic swords to shine in their hands. It was unknown whether it was the person or the sword that was famous, but when the evil magicians saw the Lion King's Heart and the Grandmaster Silver Craftsman, they all clamored. You're Erica Brantley and Liliana Kranjkar." "Oh." Erica narrowed her eyes, and the smile on her face became a little dangerous. "I didn't intend to reveal my name to the shady clown, but since you've recognized me, I'll take care of you beautifully since you have such good taste." While Erica was making a declaration before the battle, Liliana had already spun the Grandmaster Silver Craftsman in her hand, and the tip of the sword pointed downward. With a slight air-piercing sound, she stabbed the silver military knife into the ground with a swished sound. "Mother who gives and takes life, give me the beacon of the dark land." The spirit of the language turned into power, causing the spell power around Liliana to surge into the ground through the Grandmaster Silver Craftsman that was stabbed into the ground. Plop! Like the surface of the water with a stone thrown into it, the ground rippled slowly with the sound of water, sweeping across the numerous magicians who were still in panic. Then, the ground suddenly turned soft as if it had turned into a swamp. The magicians standing on the ground felt their heels stick, and their bodies sank into the ground. What's this thing? Is it the magic that turns the ground into a bottomless swamp? Despicable witch. Hurry. Use counterattack magic. Seeing this, Erica smiled coldly. Unfortunately, it's too slow. With that, Erica tossed the Lion King's heart into the air. The sharp longsword abruptly pierced into a magic formation that rippled out above her head. The Lion King's heart, bestowing upon the steel lion the mission to tear, pierce, crush, defeat, annihilate, and triumph. I entrust you to this battlefield. The Lion King's heart that was pierced into the center of the magic formation sank into the magic formation. As if intending to take its place, as the sharp longsword plunged into the magic formation from the bottom, a gigantic steel lion emerged from the top of the magic formation as if it had just broken through the ground. It stood on top of the magic formation and leaped forward. Bang! With a muffled sound, the giant steel lion suddenly fell to the ground. Roar! The huge steel lion raised its head and roared. Then, like a bullet fired from a gun, it pounced toward the magicians who were stuck in the ground. Ah! Cries of agony resounded in the air above the rocky ground for a long time. Ah! As the last magician let out a sorrowful cry under the bite of the steel lion, the battle came to an end. Hum! The steel lion emitted crimson light, and its body began to disintegrate into a silver-white longsword. It flashed in the air and returned to Erica's hand. As expected, the battle was one-sided. The magicians, who were dozens of times more powerful than them, were like the most vulnerable ordinary people in front of Electra and Liliana. In less than 10 minutes, they were all felled by Electra's Lion King's heart and Liliana's Silver Master Craftsman. Looking at the black-robed people lying on the ground, Noah, who was waiting on the side with his arms crossed, sighed. Then, he narrowed his eyes and looked grumpily at Erica and Liliana who were walking toward him. Now, can you tell me why you're here? Ha! Erica smiled mischievously. I think His Majesty should have guessed it. We used tracking magic and followed His Majesty here. Liliana answered Noah's question solemnly and lowered her head. I'm really sorry for tracking His Majesty without His Majesty's permission. But His Majesty, we had no choice. Noah curled his lips as he looked at the two young ladies in front of him who spat out different words but had the same matter-of-fact expression without the slightest hint of regret or guilt. In other words, you're still worried about letting me wander around Italy, so you chased after me and decided to keep an eye on me, right? Erica and Liliana immediately looked at each other. If we say no, I don't think His Majesty will believe us. So, we don't intend to hide it. That's one of our purposes, Erica said with a sweet smile. However, that's not important. What's important is that we feel that although you're not as uninterested in things other than fighting as Sarbotlii, you should need someone like Andre by your side. Please let us follow His Majesty. Liliana said solemnly. With the reputation of a bronze black cross on the line, Liliana Kranikar will definitely protect His Majesty. Erica and Liliana knelt on one knee at the same time and performed the knight salute, waiting for Noah's decision. Staring at the two girls, Noah sighed. What's going on? Chapter 497. Alim. After a while, Noah told Erica and Liliana about how he met Athena last night, followed her here, discovered those evil magicians and came to this ruin. After understanding the whole story, Erica and Liliana fell silent almost at the same time. They looked at the evil magicians lying on the ground with hostility in their eyes. What a loss of composure, Liliana expressed her inner emotions directly. Although the losses caused by the battle between the two kings made the magic societies in Italy focus most of their attention on the crater, which is why they didn't discover the petty tricks of these despicable people, none of the magic societies discovered the situation here. It's really a loss of composure on the part of the magic societies in Italy. There's nothing we can do about it, Lily, Erica analyzed calmly. After all, Italy is basically controlled by various magic societies in secret now. Even if there were any ruins, they would have basically discovered them. Who would have thought that there would be undiscovered ruins hidden in this place? Or maybe someone discovered it, but didn't explore it, right? Noah made sarcastic remarks as if it had nothing to do with him. Although they are all magic societies in Italy, there is also a hostile relationship between the Copper Black Cross and the Bronze Black Cross. It's impossible for all the magic societies in this country to be united. This ruin might have been discovered by some magic society, but in order not to attract the attention of other magic societies, they haven't found the opportunity to explore it. Noah glanced in the direction of the ruins. To put it simply, it's possible that some magic society has been hiding this ruin because they want to monopolize it and wait for the opportunity to explore it. In the end, it was discovered by these evil magic societies during this sensitive period, right? Erica sighed. It's not impossible. Upon hearing that, Liliana furrowed her brows subtly, revealing a trace of helplessness and irritation on her face. Liliana's personality was too straightforward, which could be said to be the most standard type of knight. Therefore, Liliana generally wouldn't get involved in complicated matters such as conspiracy theories. It could be said that in terms of talent in swordsmanship and magic, Liliana wasn't inferior to Erica at all. However, Liliana didn't have the temperament and qualities of a social lady at all. That was why Liliana had been toyed with by Erica since she was a child. Liliana could also understand the various speculations of Noah and Erica, but it was difficult for her to participate in the discussion. The only thing Liliana could do was to express her feelings without hiding anything. Hence, Liliana said as if she was having a headache. I didn't expect that even a goddess like Athena would appear and look for the snake. If she finds the snake, when she regains her identity as the Queen of the Trinity, even the king would have a hard time dealing with her. Indeed. Erica also furrowed her brows cutely. It's fine if it's an ordinary Athena, but this Athena actually has the possibility of recovering her identity as the Trinity. That's really a terrible divine spark. Once Athena retrieves the snake, it will be really troublesome. Hearing Erica and Liliana's words that came from the bottom of their hearts, Noah was stunned for a moment before he came to his senses. Wait, do you know what Athena meant by the snake and the Trinity? Erica and Liliana nodded heavily at the same time. That goddess is really too famous, but unfortunately, the Athena you know is slightly different from this Athena, Erica said to Noah. Your Majesty, do you think that this Athena is the goddess of wisdom and war in Greek mythology? Ha! Noah was taken aback. Isn't she? Yes. But not all of them. Liliana replied. Your Majesty, you said that this Athena claims to be a queen who once had everything and then lost everything, and a goddess of the Trinity. Then, the Athena in Greek mythology is just a part of this manifested goddess. Athena, Metis, and Medusa. Erica directly revealed the true identity of the goddess that Noah encountered by chance. The Trinity means that this Athena has 3 divine sparks, which are not inferior to the highest gods at the level of the King of Gods and the King of Gods at all. Snake. That was the essence of Athena. Athena had always been a goddess closely related to snakes. And when snakes were mentioned, the first thing that came to mind was Medusa, who was also closely related to Athena. Athena and Medusa were originally the same goddess. That was before the myth of Athena and Medusa spread to Greece and became the myth of Athena and Medusa in Greek mythology. Tracing back to the origin, in fact, Athena was the monster of snakes. No, it should be said that she was the goddess of snakes. Not only that, in Greek mythology, Metis, the goddess of wisdom who was Athena's mother, was also originally Athena. Athena was originally not a goddess of Greek origin, but a goddess of the earth who was born in North Africa and worshipped by the entire Mediterranean Sea. At that time, Athena had many other names and images. Metis, Medusa, Nat, Yanata, 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 Ashrat, and other such mythical beings were originally clones of the original Athena, which could be said to be Athena's sisters. Athena was not only the goddess of the earth, but also the god of darkness who ruled the underworld and the goddess of wisdom who controlled the wisdom of the heavens. Because Athena was always accompanied by these three attributes, she became the goddess of the Trinity. These were the characteristics of Athena. And as the characteristics of the god of war, they were only added to Athena's divine sparks with the changes of time. The god of Hades who managed death and the greatest disaster, which was related to war, became the god of war, which was very reasonable. Then, the key to the birth of the Trinity of Athena was the snake. Although the cow, sheep, pig, and other creatures were also used to symbolize the harvest of the earth, in fact, Athena's essence was the snake. This was the most ancient goddess of the earth, which was also the key to the mother of the earth. Life would go through the stages of birth, growth, maturity, aging and death. The grains of the earth would also go through the 4 stages of growth in spring, lush in summer, bear fruit in autumn and wither in winter. Therefore, that snake was the true ancient symbol of the mother of the earth. After several molts, the snake would go through a cycle of hibernation and awakening. It was a creature that symbolized the cycle of death and rebirth, as well as the migration of seasons. Compared to the cow, which symbolized harvest and love, the snake, which symbolized both the grace of life and the death of calamity, was the true goddess of the earth. Therefore, Athena was the goddess of the earth, and also the goddess of the snake. And for the ancient people, a strange and mysterious creature like the snake was very rare. It would constantly molt and shed its outer shell, and in the winter, it would hibernate for a long time. Then, as if it was resurrected from the dead, it would wake up in the spring and easily cross the gap between winter and spring. This was called immortality. Therefore, Athena was also the immortal god of the underworld. She was the god of nature and the underworld who brought death. This was why Athena was the goddess of the earth and the god of the underworld at the same time. Moreover, the underworld imagined by the ancient people basically existed in the dark underground. It was a winter world shrouded in darkness. Therefore, the time dominated by darkness, namely night, was probably also a part of the underworld. Therefore, Athena was also the goddess of darkness. As the goddess of the earth who brought grace, Athena was the goddess of darkness who controlled the underworld and the goddess of wisdom who controlled wisdom. The 3 types of divinity gave Athena a supreme status. This made Athena have the characteristics of a bird in addition to the essence of a snake. Bird? Noah was stunned. Why are you talking about a bird again? Erica and Liliana nodded to each other and revealed the true identity of the supreme goddess, the Trinity of Athena. Chapter 498. In addition to the word snake, Athena also had a deep relationship with the word bird. Medusa, the goddess of snakes with evil eyes, was the best evidence to prove the close relationship between Athena and birds. The 3 Gorgon sisters, including Medusa, not only had snake hair, they were also said to have golden wings on their backs. The second of the 3 Medusa sisters, Euryale, meant the one who flies far away, while the youngest sister, Medusa, was the winged Pegasus mother. In the Mediterranean region, there was an ancient portrait of Medusa. In this portrait, Medusa was holding a snake with both hands and had a bird on her head, which clearly showed the close relationship between snakes and birds. However, what really connected Athena and birds was her identity as the goddess of the earth and the underworld. A long time ago, the ancestors of humans believed that birds had the magical power to fly between the other world and the modern world. Moreover, the souls of the dead would turn into birds and fly into the sky, or be guided by birds into the underworld. In order to go back and forth between the earth and the underworld, the snake, that symbolized the earth, and the bird, that symbolized the underworld, were combined and became the symbol of Athena, the goddess of the earth and the underworld. Therefore, the word bird was added to the word snake, and Medusa became a winged snake, or a winged snake. The original Athena, who had not yet been spread to Greece and became a goddess of Greek mythology, was a winged snake, the goddess of life and death worshipped by the ancient people. She ruled over the earth and the underworld, and controlled the wisdom of the heavens. There was no doubt that this Athena was the highest existence among the gods. This was not a random divinity, but the true form of Athena before it was spread to Greece. After all, at that time, society was still dominated by women, and it was not surprising that the goddess of mythology was a queen. Therefore, Athena was the goddess of the gods at that time, the queen of the gods with the highest authority. This was the true Athena, the highest existence among the gods. However, the society of women's supremacy soon ended, and men began to replace women, becoming the real masters of society. Under such circumstances, myths began to be falsified. The goddesses, led by Athena, were chased down from the highest throne, and the male gods with military power began to rebel. The myth of a female-dominated society was wantonly changed by the men who ended the female-dominated society. The era of the queen came to an end, and the era of the king began. The supreme deity changed from the matriarchal earth mother to the strict father god. Thus, starting from Zeus, the king of gods was born. As a result, Athena's identity as the queen of the divine realm who ruled over the Mediterranean Sea became a downtrodden and obedient queen. Under the situation where myths were altered by men, the oldest Athena and her clones fell and became the wife, sister, or daughter of the king of gods, losing their past glory. Not only did Athena become Zeus's daughter, but Metis was also humiliated by Zeus and his intelligence was taken away. Medusa even degenerated into a monster. Not only that, but Hera and Aphrodite in Greek mythology were also the same as Athena, the Mother Earth whose myths had been tampered with. They had the same origin as Athena, and they were both goddesses of life and death. The defeated Mother Earth turned into a winged serpent, which was also mentioned in the myths. Dragon. The evil dragon that appeared in countless myths and legends and was defeated by the heroes and gods was the Mother Earth's demeaning appearance after her myth was tampered with and defeated. It wasn't because they were evil monsters that they were defeated. Instead, it was because the victors wanted to fabricate their own legitimacy and smear the losers as evil monsters. Then, they spread the story of how they destroyed the monsters and established such a myth. Because of this, the winged serpent, which was also a dragon, turned into a monster in the myths, and the divinity of the Mother Earth was also denied. The Athena in Greek mythology was one of the queens of the gods and the divine realm after her myths had been tampered with. Metis, who was reduced to Zeus's wife, was also a part of the queen who ruled over the Mediterranean Sea. Liliana finally said. And the essence of this great queen of the gods, Medusa, who represented the snake, was tampered with to become the banshee that Athena sent the heroes to kill. Perhaps it was because of this conflict that the Athena who appeared lost the essence of the snake. In other words, once Athena finds the snake that she lost, the goddess will be restored to the queen of the gods who once ruled over the Mediterranean Sea and the divine realm, the highest goddess of the Trinity. Erica concluded. Once she regains her true identity as the queen, Athena will undoubtedly be the highest goddess, definitely not below Velislana and Mekhl. Hearing all this, Noah was suddenly enlightened. No wonder Athena said that she was the queen who once had everything and then lost everything. In this way, Athena was not as simple as the goddess of wisdom and war in Greek mythology, but the queen of the earth, darkness, and wisdom of the divine realm. Thinking about it carefully, the darkness that filled Athena's body with the aura of death last night was the best evidence to prove that Athena was the goddess of darkness in charge of the underworld. At that time, Athena had lost her most essential snake, and her identity as the goddess of the earth was taken away. She could only exercise the authority of the goddess of darkness and wisdom. Presumably, compared to when she was in her complete state, her power should be much weaker. That was why Noah felt that Athena at that time was not difficult to deal with at all. However, if Athena were to take back the snake, it would be a different story. At that time, Athena would no longer be the goddess of wisdom and war, but the queen of the divine realm. At this moment, Noah felt that one of the patterns in his heart that connected the 10 avatars suddenly lit up for no reason, as if it had turned into a dried-up lake that had been injected with a large amount of water, causing a part of Noah's power to become active. Noah raised one of his hands. That hand was shining with a golden radiance, illuminating the surrounding space resplendently. That is. Erica and Liliana also saw this scene clearly and were stunned on the spot. Noah, on the other hand, seemed to understand something. He raised his eyebrows and the corners of his mouth rose. It seems that even if the queen really retrieves the snake, my sword will be able to cut the snake in half. Hearing this, Erica and Liliana seemed to have thought of something, and their expressions suddenly brightened. You've got a good weapon, haven't you? Erica put on a gorgeous smile again. As expected of the king who can defeat the 2 highest-level gods at the same time. If you can even get that sword, then you may become the most suitable king to deal with the disobedient god, and even the strongest king who won't be any weaker than the other god slayers in the future. If that's the case, we'll have a better chance of defeating Athena. Liliana's mood also became a little excited, but then it became a little strange. However, in less than 10 days, he was able to fight with 2 of the highest-level gods, fight with the King of Swords of Italy, and now meet the former Queen of the Divine Realm. This time, it seems that there will be a lot of disputes around the king. That's why you need me, Erica glanced at Noah and said with a faint smile. After all, if there are too many disputes, the king won't have time to care about worldly affairs, right? Noah rolled his eyes. Wait, Erica. Liliana frowned. Have you forgotten about my existence? Lily is not suitable to be the king's butler, Erica said bluntly. Compared to a butler, Lily is more suitable to be a simple knight, isn't it? Liliana was speechless. Liliana, who was too straightforward, was indeed not suitable to deal with complicated affairs like Andre. It doesn't matter what you do. For me, it's just that I lack an attendant to lead the way and deal with affairs. Noah sighed again and then turned his eyes to the entrance of the ruins. Let's go in and take a look. Maybe the snake that Athena is looking for is inside. Both Electra and Liliana nodded. Chapter 499. They were in an extremely humid underground ruin. The floor, ceiling, and surrounding walls were pitch black, but they were all covered with moss and obvious wet water stains. Water was even dripping from the top of the ceiling, making one wonder why there was a dry rocky land above the ruin. Through the stone door at the entrance of the ruin, Noah, Erica, and Liliana entered the interior of the ruin one by one. As soon as they entered the ruin, except for Noah, Erica and Liliana's faces stiffened, and their eyes became solemn. Only those who had the same power in their bodies could sense it. Inside the ruin, almost every corner was filled with a faint spell power. In the depths of the ruins, in front of the bottomless pitch-black tunnel, a powerful curse power that was clearly impossible for ordinary humans to possess blew over like a gust of wind, constantly slapping Noah, Erica, and Liliana's faces. Sensing the enormous spell power that permeated the air, Erica and Liliana's expressions turned solemn. Now I'm sure that even if there's no Athena's snake in this ruin, there must be something incredible sleeping there. Erica's face was solemn, but there was no fear in her eyes. I guess it's at least something related to the god of disobedience. It's really lucky to find this place in advance. Liliana was already holding Silver Master Craftsman in her hand, and she looked straight ahead of her in the passage. If it's something related to the god of disobedience, maybe we can do something in advance to resolve the disaster that is very likely to involve the god of disobedience. I'd rather have Athena's snake in there. Noah had a different opinion. We haven't dealt with Athena yet. If another god comes out, I don't want to keep trying to deal with 2 gods at the same time. As soon as he said that, Erica and Liliana looked at Noah strangely at the same time. If it's Sarbad Raiching, she'll probably be overjoyed, right? Erica couldn't help but say. Isn't it the wish of every god slayer to be able to fight a god? Not to mention, you're just a new king, Liliana added. Although you have killed 2 gods at the same time, you only have 2 powers at the moment. Compared to the other deicide, it is too little. Even you have 4 powers. Don't you want to kill more disobedient gods to increase your own strength? It was not surprising that Erica and Liliana would think so. Who would mind if they were too strong? Not to mention the power of God. Once he succeeded, he would be able to increase his strength to a certain extent. Unless they were like Tony, who obtained authority that was completely useless in actual combat. However, killing a god was a gamble in the first place. After all, a god's authority could be strong or weak. If a god's authority was so weak that it could not be used in battle like Tony's, it was considered bad luck. However, if a god's authority was strong, it was not impossible to surpass the god slayer in one fell swoop. Noah was believed to have only 2 powers at the moment. It was not strange for him to want to increase his own strength, right? It was a pity that Noah only had 1 power, but it could be used as 10 powers. With so many powers in his body, increasing the power of 1 more power might not necessarily increase Noah's strength. Moreover, the reward was proportional to the risk. They are gods. Do you think they are mosquitoes that you can swat whenever you want? Noah replied impatiently. It's good to be able to increase my strength, but I have to be alive to use it. Instead of fighting 2 gods at the same time and not knowing when I will be killed, I prefer to fight steadily and surely. Even if I want to fight, 1 is enough. Greed is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Be careful that you can't swallow it and choke yourself to death. On the uninhabited island, the king who said that he wanted to kill the 2 highest level gods at the same time said so. Fortunately, Erica and Liliana did not know about this. Otherwise, they would have complained. Let's go in. Noah took a step forward. There is definitely something up ahead. It is very likely that Athena or something will appear at any time. You guys be careful. With that, Noah planned to walk in front of Erica and Liliana. This was an almost instinctive action. In such a dangerous place, it was natural for a man to protect a woman in front. However, Erica and Liliana reached out their hands with great tacit understanding and each grabbed one of Noah's arms. At times like this, it is a knight's duty to walk in front and explore the way, Liliana said to Noah with a serious expression as usual. As a king, you can't use yourself to explore the way. If you treat me as an ordinary girl, even if you are a king, Erica Brantery, will draw my sword and show you the bravery of a knight. Erica smiled fearlessly. A king's duty is to deal with gods. Leave the rest to me and Lily. With that, Erica and Liliana protected the stunned Noah behind them. They stood side by side and looked ahead. Lily, it seems like we haven't gone on a crusade together like today for a long time. Erica had a confident smile on her face. It just so happens that the king that the knights need to protect is also here. Why don't we see who is braver? To be honest, I don't encourage personal strife at times like this, Liliana said without turning her head. However, you are the only one I will not lose to. The 2 girls, who were known as prodigies, looked at each other with intense sparks in their eyes. Then, they held their beloved swords and stepped forward at the same time. Moreover, it was as if they were in a race. They dashed forward abruptly as if they were not allowed to fall behind. Only then did Noah react. Seeing Erica and Liliana disappear at the end of the passage, his outstretched hand hung in the air and he was speechless for a long time. In the end, Noah squeezed out a sentence in a speechless manner. What happened to the protection? Noah, who chased after them half leisurely and half helplessly, soon discovered Erica and Liliana who had stopped. Hey, you! Noah called out instinctively, but the scene that appeared in front of him made his voice come to an abrupt halt and his footsteps came to a halt. The scene before Erica and Liliana could be described as hell. Corpses in black robes. Puddles of bright-colored blood. Small pits that popped out from the ground. There were also black snakes that crawled out of the pits, wrapped around the black-robed figures, and tore them apart crazily. Needless to say, the black-robed figures were the companions of the evil magicians outside. These magicians also held various tools in their hands, such as ordinary shovels and some unknown magic tools. It was obvious that they were excavating this ruin. Liliana's expression was unprecedentedly solemn. Even though he deserved to die, he still makes people feel uncomfortable. Is this the capability of an illegitimate magic association? Erica sounded rather helpless too. Generally speaking, for ruins like this that have obviously not been excavated, the source must be investigated in advance. Then, a professional geomancer will investigate and determine the degree of danger before excavating. These illegal magic associations naturally don't have such a formal response. It's understandable that they ended up like this because they were in a hurry to excavate the ruins. The so-called geomancer technique referred to magic that was similar to feng shui. It was a ritualistic magic that allowed one to see the geomancer and spiritual energy of the land and manipulate them to bring benefits to oneself. Those who knew geomancer techniques were geomancers. If a geomancer were to investigate the ruins, they would be able to see the geomancer and spiritual energy inside the ruins and detect all the dangers, thus preventing the loss of personnel and slowing down the progress. Unfortunately, the average evil magic association wouldn't have such a formal way to deal with it. Barging in rashly would naturally result in this outcome. Hiss. At this moment, the black snakes that were biting the black-robed figures made creepy sounds, attracting the attention of Noah, Erica, and Liliana. Then, the three of them realized that all the black snakes were aiming their glowing green eyes at them. Chapter 500. Hiss. Black snakes that weren't too huge lifted their heads from the corpses of the black-robed people lying on the ground. Their small heads were aimed at Noah, Erica, and Liliana, and they flicked their forked tongues and let out chilling hisses. Rustle. Then, sounds of friction against the ground could be heard. Upon a closer look, the black snakes were emerging from the small pits on the ground. Together with the black snakes coiling around the corpses of the black-robed people, they crawled towards Noah, Erica, and Liliana like ants swarming out of an ant nest. Erica and Liliana tensed up. They raised Lion King's heart and Silver Master Craftsman at the same time and aimed at the group of black snakes crawling towards them. Faint traces of spell power were attached to the swords. Noah, who was standing behind Erica and Liliana, stared at the black snakes crawling towards them. After a while, his eyes flashed, and he suddenly spoke. "Be careful, those aren't ordinary black snakes. These snakes have traces of spell power on them, and they don't have the aura of living creatures. They aren't real living creatures." Upon hearing that, Erica and Liliana discovered that each of the black snakes was shrouded in a faint layer of spell power. These curses were extremely weak. Even if they were used to cast the lowest level of magic, there would be a problem of insufficient quantity. However, if all of the black snakes had curse power, then the total amount of curse power would be extremely impressive. "Lily!" Erica immediately shouted. "I know." Liliana responded almost at the same time. She raised the saber in her hand and placed it vertically in front of her. A large amount of spell power gushed out of her body. "The essence of fantasy, the steel that plays beautiful melodies, please give me invisible wings." Liliana condensed all the curse power in her body onto the Grandmaster Silver Craftsman. She stretched out her empty hand and flicked the blade of the silver military knife. Ding! Along with a pleasant bell-like ringing sound, the curse power covering the Silver Master Craftsman reverberated like a sound wave, sweeping across the black snakes on the ground. The black snakes crawling towards Noah and the other two suddenly froze in place as if they had been petrified, unable to move at all. The magic sword, Silver Grandmaster Craftsman, was a steel that could play beautiful music. It could play all kinds of magic tunes and use them as secondary weapons. They had the effect of disturbing the listener's heart, weakening spell power, robbing physical strength, and so on. The effects varied according to the different magic tunes. Just now, Liliana had played a demonic tune that could weaken the spell power and steal the physical strength of the black snakes on the ground, depriving them of the faint spell power and even their physical strength, rendering them unable to move. Erica's Silver Master Craftsman. Argus, Stropes, Brontes, grant my sword the protection of thunder. As soon as she finished speaking, a series of crackling electric currents echoed from Erica's Silver Master Craftsman. A burst of intense electric current lit up the entire dark underground. Go! Erica threw the Erica's Silver Master Craftsman with lightning flashing on the sword like a spear. Like a bolt of lightning breaking through the air, the Erica's Silver Master Craftsman shot out and landed in the middle of a dense group of black snakes. Beep, beep, beep. The lightning that was originally surrounding the Lion King's heart was like boiling water. It began to boil, and through the body of the sword that was inserted into the ground, it suddenly spread out in all directions like a spider web, crazily crossing each other on the ground. Paw, 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 paw. In the next moment, the black snakes that were hit by the violent electric current shrank their bodies, and they all exploded in a series of muffled crisp sounds, turning into small pieces of gravel that fell to the ground and mixed into the soil. Before long, all the black snakes were wiped out. Seeing this, Erica and Liliana didn't relax. Instead, their expressions became more solemn. After the black serpents were eliminated, the curse power that was originally covering the black serpents and weakened by Liliana's demonic tune actually spread into the air and gathered there, forming a huge lump of curse power. Rumble, immediately, the ground began to shake slightly. At the same time, an ominous premonition rose in Erica and Liliana's hearts. No! Erica and Liliana were startled. But before they could do anything, an accident happened. The huge spell power block that gathered in the air suddenly shook, and the shaking ground immediately floated up and gathered on the huge spell power block. In just a short while, a huge beast was formed in midair. The beast had scales, horns on its head, sharp limbs, and a pair of huge wings on its back. Its pupils were like those of a snake, emitting a cold and fierce ruthlessness. Not to mention Erica and Liliana, even Noah recognized the true form of this beast. It was a dragon. Perhaps it should be said that it was the symbol of the Mother Earth, a winged serpent. Roar! The dragon's roar shook the air, carrying a violent force that seemed to penetrate the space. It spread in all directions and even turned into wind waves that blew toward Erica and Liliana. That's... Erica and Liliana couldn't help but tremble. A divine beast. The tamed beasts of the gods, or the demon beasts, demonic beasts, and holy beasts that only existed in myths and legends, were divine beasts. They had tremendous power. Once they appeared on the ground, except for the god-slayers or the god of disobedience, only the holy knights, who stood at the peak of human beings, had the power to fight them. Unfortunately, although Erica and Liliana had amazing talents, they couldn't rival the holy knights, who stood at the peak of human beings, when they were still underage. It was already impressive for them to reach the rank of Grand Knight. However, if it was only a Grand Knight, then it would be a little difficult for the two of them to deal with a mythological beast. Roar! The vicious dragon, which was 3 to 4 meters tall and whose head almost touched the ceiling, raised its head and roared. Then, it raised one of its dragon claws and swung it forward. Whoosh! A sharp sonic boom immediately rang out, kicking up a violent gale that flashed through space, heading in the direction of Erica and Liliana. Erica and Liliana's hearts skipped a beat. They hurriedly raised Lion King's heart and Silver Master sword in their hands and added strong spell power to the swords, trying to resist the vicious dragon's blow. Clang! However, in the loud sound of steel colliding with steel, Erica and Liliana grunted at the same time. In the sparks and strong wind, they bounced back as if they had hit a wall and didn't stabilize themselves until they took more than a dozen steps back. At that moment, a ferocious glint flashed in the evil dragon's eyes. It raised its claws once again and swung them at Electra and Liliana in a strong gust of wind and an ear-piercing sound. Oh, no! It was already too late for Electra and Liliana to react. Just when Erica and Liliana were about to use magic to strengthen their physical defenses to resist this blow, an indifferent voice sounded. "Stop it!" Although the voice was very soft, it echoed clearly. At the same time, a strange curse power filled the entire space. It was as if the entire space had turned into an invisible swamp, becoming sticky. Under such circumstances, the vicious dragon's sweeping blow seemed to have fallen into a swamp called space. It froze and couldn't move anymore. Roar! The vicious dragon's eyes flashed with a bloody light. It tried desperately to twitch its arms, but it couldn't move at all. Soon after, the indifferent voice sounded again. "Who told you to move?" With just this one sentence, the evil dragon's body suddenly froze in place, and there was no longer any trace of movement. Erica and Liliana's eyes widened. What's going on? Chapter 501. Roar! The gigantic evil dragon let out a low roar. Every corner of its scaly body was clearly twitching. However, it was as if something was tightly squeezing it into that space. It couldn't move at all. It could only let out a series of angry roars, causing the surrounding air to vibrate continuously. Erica and Liliana seemed to have thought of something. They turned their heads abruptly and looked behind them. There, Noah's whole body was fluctuating with an extremely terrifying spell. His eyes seemed to be flashing with a dim light as he muttered to himself. "I use these words to provoke the gods in the sky. Exercise this magic power, chant this spell, make everything in the world bow and kneel." It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the word spirit turned into a soft echo like a declaration. It wandered in the dark space of the underground ruins, making the fluctuation of the spell around Noah's body slowly wander and fill the entire space. It was because of the existence of the spirit of speech that could provoke the gods and the enormous power of the curse. The mythological beast, which was a great enemy to humans, was like an obedient pet under the command of the king who killed the gods. It no longer moved, and even its roar was full of fear. Only then did Erica and Liliana realize what was going on. Noah used authority. That was one of the authority called the 10 incarnations priest. Priest, the incarnation formed by combining Welleslana's youth incarnation and Noah's rune magic. Using this incarnation could obtain the ability to protect and dominate, shelter and make humans obey. Only when using this incarnation could the user use the rune magic. Combined with the authority itself, the power of the rune magic was greatly increased, and it was also independent. It didn't need to be in contact with the magic base plate to use magic equivalent to the authority. Welleslana was the guardian of the royal authority and the people. And the embodiment of this nature was in Welleslana's youth incarnation. When using the youth incarnation, not only could Welleslana protect the people he protected and make them obey, but he could also interpret the royal authority itself in words. That was domination. When he was fighting with Noah on the uninhabited island, Welleslana, in the state of the incarnation of the young man, made the waves retreat with a single word, and made the sand sword form with a single word, vividly reflecting the word control. Now, Welleslana's youth incarnation and Noah's rune magic had combined to form a new incarnation priest. After all, language and writing originally had a close relationship that couldn't be separated from each other. combining the incarnation of the young man that represented the dominance and protection of language with the runi magic that represented writing couldn't be more suitable. Using the priest incarnation, Noah could also obtain the spirit of speech that was not weaker than Welleslana's spirit of speech. He could interpret the king's authority with spirit of speech and language, and could also use the rune magic that was completely separated from the magic base plate. It was the same as Tony's protection of steel, but the scope was not limited to steel. Of course, to deal with a mere divine beast, Noah didn't need to use the rune magic that had already reached the level of authority. He only needed to use the spirit of speech to firmly control the divine beast that was considered a great enemy to humans. I am the strongest, and I hold all victory in my hands, no matter if it is a human or a demon. I am the one who defeats the hostility of all enemies. I will defeat any enemy that stands in my way. After chanting the holy words of the invincible and undefeatable God of victory, Noah raised his head and looked at the dragon that was firmly controlled. A glint flashed across his dark eyes. Just like those black snakes, undoubtedly, there is no breath of life in its body at all. It is completely like a moving corpse, but there is a huge amount of curse power supporting its movement. It even gave birth to a certain level of wisdom and gave birth to a divine beast. Noah walked forward and passed by Erica and Liliana, who were staring at him blankly. He came to the front of the dragon and sized it up for a while. Then, he fixed his eyes on the dragon's reverse scale. "I'd like to see what your true face is." After saying that, Noah raised one of his hands. His arm trembled all of a sudden, and a series of magic lines like electric wires spread out and covered Noah's arm. Using the enhance magic to strengthen his arm strength, Noah raised his hand over his shoulder and pulled it back. His entire arm was like a sharp spear, suddenly piercing through the air and fiercely stabbing towards the dragon's reverse scale. Poochie! The scales on the evil dragon's body were broken apart. Its skin and muscles were also mercilessly pierced through by Noah's spear-like palm, causing green blood to splatter everywhere. Awoo! The dragon's roar became painful. Noah, who turned a blind eye to this, forcefully pulled out his hand that pierced into the dragon's body amidst a tearing sound. After another burst of green blood spurted out, he tapped his toes on the ground and retreated rapidly. Then, the dragon's painful roar came to an abrupt end. Crack, crack. Under the gaze of Erica and Liliana, the dragon's body cracked like a stone. Cracks gradually spread on its body, and its body gradually petrified with the appearance of the cracks, turning into a stone statue riddled with holes. In the next moment, the huge evil dragon statue directly exploded, turning into a sky full of gravel that fell to the ground. Looking at this scene, Erica and Liliana did not come back to their senses for a long time. The divine beast that made the two grand knights of Italy, who were known as prodigies, fall into a bitter battle was destroyed just like that. It was not until this moment that Erica and Liliana realized how big the gap was between them and the king. Sure enough, humans could not resist the God Slayer, who was the king. Therefore, the God Slayer was the demon king. Noah, who did not know how Erica and Liliana felt, focused his gaze on his hand that had just pierced into the dragon's body. At this time, in Noah's hand, a fist-sized badge was lying on it. It was a badge that was as thick and ancient as a rock like polished obsidian. On the surface of the badge, there was a clumsy portrait that looked like a human face. Taking a closer look, the hair of the human face was actually composed of snakes with twisted bodies. Many places on the badge had been blurred, and the stone itself was quite worn. At a glance, one could tell that it was a rather ancient object with a long history. That badge was dug out by Noah from the dragon's body. Relying on his sensing ability, Noah found that the curse power on the dragon was almost all gushing out from a foreign object in its body. It was through that foreign object that the dragon's movements could be formed, and even its existence was maintained by the curse power provided by this foreign object. So, Noah dug out the foreign object. Needless to say, that foreign object was the badge in Noah's hand. This is Medusa. Looking at the portrait on the badge, Noah said with some uncertainty, "Is this the snake that Athena is looking for?" Hearing this, Erica and Liliana came back to their senses and also noticed the badge in Noah's hand. That's... Erica recognized the emblem at a glance and was surprised. Could it be the Stone of Gorgon? It should be. Liliana stepped forward and took the badge from Noah's hand, looked at it carefully, and then met Noah's puzzled gaze and explained. This is the ancient symbol of Mother Earth, a road sign that guides many goddesses to the disobedient Mother Earth. Simply put, it's something like a grimoire. Grimoire. Noah could not help but be startled, and his eyes became even more puzzled. But this is not a book, it's just a badge made of stone. There are no words on it, only pictures, right? In the era when the gods still existed on the ground, not to mention paper, even words had not yet appeared. Liliana shook her head and explained. However, its function and concept are the same as a book. That's why it's called a grimoire. However, other than the oldest Mother Earth goddess like Athena, it doesn't mean anything else. It's a god relic that only gods can use. Chapter 502. God Relics. To put it simply, they were props and tools used by the gods during the mythological era. These god relics only reacted to the power of the gods, but they could not be used by the god-slayers. The only ones who could use them had always been the gods. Of course, it was also possible to find a way to use the god relics in a more roundabout way. But in general, humans still could not use god relics as they wished. Only the gods could use specific god relics without any means. The Stone of Gorgon was such an existence. It was the symbol of Mother Earth. It was a god relic that only the oldest Mother Earth could use. Not only could such god relics be used by the oldest goddess, but humans could not find any other way to use them. It was a god relic that only the Mother Earth could use. So, this Gorgon stone is most likely Athena's snake. Noah glanced at the badge in Liliana's hand. It's engraved with a Medusa-like pattern, and only the oldest Mother Earth could use it. I can't think of any other possibility besides the snake that Athena is looking for. Both Erica and Liliana nodded in agreement with Noah's idea. Let the king keep this. After hesitating for a moment, Liliana handed the Gorgon stone in her hand to Noah. Since Athena is looking for it, if we keep it, it will be taken away sooner or later. After all, humans can't fight against the god-slayers and the disobedient gods. Erica recalled the scene of that powerful mythological beast being cleanly defeated by Noah and sighed, which was a rare sight. If we give it to Tharbiter will be very happy to give it to Athena. We don't want to see an all-out war with Athena, who has recovered her identity as the Queen of the Trinity. I don't care. Noah took the Stone of Gorgon over as if he really didn't care about it. In this way, Athena will not be able to recover and will not be a match for me. I can't help but worry. Only then did Erica and Liliana relax a little. Logically speaking, even if Athena had not recovered to the highest level of the Trinity, she was still a goddess of wisdom and war from Greek mythology. She was much stronger than the average god. Under such circumstances, whether a king who had been born for less than 10 days could deal with such a goddess was really quite suspenseful. However, Erica and Liliana didn't doubt Noah's words at all. He was able to block the attack of Italy's King of Swords before he became the king of killing gods. He was able to kill 2 gods of the highest level before becoming the king of killing gods. After becoming the king of the god-slaying, Noah defeated Doni and had the ability to cause Italy a huge loss of 15 billion euros. All these achievements indicated that Noah's strength could not be judged by the standard of a typical god-slayer. Perhaps, the only ones who could match up to the current Noah were the 2 legendary kings. This thought came to the minds of Erica and Liliana at the same time. At this time, Noah, who was weighing the stone of Gorgon, paused, and with an emotionless smile on his face, he turned his head and looked at a corner. "Aren't you going to come out and say hello?" Erica and Liliana were stunned at first, and then their bodies suddenly tensed up. They turned around abruptly, pointed the heart of the Lion King and the Master Silver Craftsman in their hands at the place where Noah was looking at, and activated the spell. The whole place suddenly fell silent. But the next moment, a fog-like darkness suddenly rose from the corner where Noah, Erica, and Liliana were facing, and gradually turned into a petite figure. Who else could it be but Athena? The dark eyes like a snake and a bird turned and fixed on the stone of Gorgon in Noah's hand, and the darkness around Athena fluctuated slightly. That was not just pure darkness. As the dark goddess in charge of the underworld, Athena's darkness often represented a kind of power. Death. Feeling the dark aura of death fluctuating around Athena, Erica and Liliana's hearts were already beating violently. Even though they were known as prodigies and had attained the rank of Grand Knight before they were minors, Erica and Liliana were still just ordinary humans after all. If there was a protective magic spell, it would be fine. But if there was no protection and they came into direct contact with the darkness around Athena, then Erica and Liliana's lives would be cursed and inevitably dragged into death until their lives were completely exhausted. With that in mind, Erica and Liliana instinctively cast defensive magic, covering their bodies in a faint glow. However, Athena did not even look at Erica and Liliana. She just looked at Noah, or more accurately, at the stone of Gorgon in Noah's hand, and her expressionless delicate face sank slightly. Am I still one step too late after all? What? Noah curled his lips and smiled. Do you need me to comfort you? Athena stared at Noah speechlessly, and after a while, she turned her eyes in a direction. It was an altar at the end of the ruins. In the center of the altar, there was a lake-like spring. Athena looked at the lake and said expressionlessly, "I just didn't expect that lake to be connected to the sea. Otherwise, the stone of Gorgon would not have come to such a place." Upon hearing this, Noah, Electra, Liliana, and the others were all stunned. Poseidon, the god of the sea, is my enemy. The sea under his control is the most suitable place to bury my snake. Athena raised her eyes and stared at Noah with a cold light in her eyes. However, because of the confrontation between the enemies, my snake seemed to have been stimulated by a huge spell. It transformed into the winged serpent, a dependent of the mother goddess of the earth, and swam over from the sea and entered the ruins. Athena's stone of Gorgon was originally sleeping in the sea, and it began to become active with Athena's awakening. If there were no accidents, the stone of Gorgon, which was active because of Athena's awakening, would drift with the sea current, and as long as it was not found and salvaged by others, it would eventually return to Athena. However, because of the huge spell generated by the battle between Noah and Tony, the stone of Gorgon seemed to be stimulated again and turned into a winged serpent and swam into the ruins. Since the lake on the altar of the ruins was connected to the sea, it could explain why the stone of Gorgon swam into the ruins. However, my snake is not so easily stimulated. Athena's dark eyes flashed with wisdom as she stared at Noah. Unless, O God Slayer, you have the power to stimulate the stone of Gorgon, such as the same snake or snake slayer divine power. Noah's eyes suddenly narrowed. The snake that represented Athena's essence was the winged serpent, which was a dragon. And one of Noah's 10 incarnations, the Dragonman incarnation, did indeed have the ability to transform Noah's body into a body that was comparable to that of a giant dragon and had the effect of causing great damage to dragons. In other words, Athena's guess was completely correct. As expected of the goddess of wisdom, she easily guessed one of the powers that Noah had never used. At that moment, Noah laughed. Regardless of the process, Athena, your snake is indeed in my hands now. Without the divine power of the Queen of the Trinity restored, do you think you can still take away your snake from me? This sentence made the atmosphere at the scene become heavy all of a sudden. Athena continued to stare at Noah with an expressionless face. Noah, on the other hand, responded with a calm expression. Erica and Liliana, on the other hand, were sweating profusely. After a long time, Athena suddenly smiled. Strength is not the only thing that can be used as a weapon. Even if my strength is not as good as yours, I still have wisdom that no one can match. With that said, Athena gave Noah a deep look. I will come to you again. With that, Athena's body was covered by a burst of darkness and disappeared. Noah quietly looked in that direction, not saying a word. Chapter 503. Because of the matter of Athena and the stone of Gorgon, after coming out of the ruins, Erica and Liliana said that they needed to report this matter to the Copper and Black Cross and the Bronze and Black Cross before they found a hotel to stay in and disappeared without a trace. Whether it was the Copper and Black Cross or the Bronze and Black Cross, they were the kind of magic societies that stood at the top of Italy. Therefore, as long as it was still in Italy, except for a few places, there were branches of the Copper Black Cross and the Bronze Black Cross in many cities. Even on holiday islands like Sardinia, there were members of these two magic associations active. Because of this, the whereabouts of the god of disobedience who appeared in Italy were generally the fastest to be known and reported to the magic societies they belonged to. If they wanted to deal with the god of disobedience, this level of response was more or less necessary. Noah also met the heads of the branches of the Copper and Black Cross and the Bronze and Black Cross in this city. The other parties seemed to have known about Noah's identity for a long time. Even if they knew that both Erica and Liliana were popular prodigies in the two magic societies, the two heads did not pay any attention to Erica and Liliana. Instead, they were submissive to Noah, as if Noah was their boss. Erica's uncle was the commander-in-chief of the entire Copper and Black Cross, and the entire Copper and Black Cross was completely under his control, and Liliana's grandfather was also in charge of the Black Cross. That was to say, whether it was Erica or Liliana, just based on their identity alone, they were definitely the princesses of the Copper and Black Cross and the Bronze and Black Cross. Under such circumstances, the heads of the two small branches ignored the two princesses and only entertained Noah, and Erica and Liliana still had a natural look on their faces. It was enough to see what kind of identity and status the god Slayer had. After the heads of the Copper and Black Cross and the Bronze and Black Cross branches entertained Noah, Erica and Liliana called the two heads aside and asked them to contact the headquarters and explain the whole thing. The Queen of the Trinity, Athena. Such a god was hiding in the dark and eyeing Noah covetously. Not to mention Erica and Liliana, even Noah himself was a little annoyed. From this point of view, the stone of Gorgon was really a hot potato. So, while Erica and Liliana were busy all day, Noah played with the Gorgon stone in boredom until night came. In the most luxurious room on the top floor of the hotel, Noah, who had just come out of the bathroom, only had a towel wrapped around his lower body and a towel around his neck. While drying his hair and face, he sat on the sofa and drank milk. To be honest, no matter which world he was in, Noah's life had never been as luxurious as it was now. Even in Howling Academy, which provided tuition, accommodation, food, and even living expenses, it was the same. However, Noah was not uncomfortable with this kind of life. Although he had never lived so extravagantly in the past, Noah had the experience of being flattered like this. Therefore, for this kind of luxury, Noah also had the mentality of, it's dispensable, and, it's a waste not to enjoy it, and accepted it with a clear conscience. At this time, on the glass table in front of the sofa, a mobile phone rang. Hearing the sound of the mobile phone, Noah, who was drinking milk, frowned. This mobile phone was given to Noah by Erica today, saying that it would be more convenient for him to move around. Moreover, it also had the private mobile phone numbers of the big bosses of the Copper and Black Cross and Bronze and Black Cross, including Erica and Liliana, saying that if there was anything he could do, he could just tell them and no one would refuse the king's request. And this also meant that the number of people who knew Noah's mobile phone number would be very limited. Not everyone could make this call. So, which big boss called Noah? Noah, who picked up the mobile phone, looked at the words "unable to display" displayed on the mobile phone interface. His frown deepened, but he still picked up the phone. As soon as he picked up the phone, before Noah could say hello, a hearty and impatient voice sounded from the other end of the phone. "Yo! Noah! My best friend! Did you miss me?" Hearing this familiar voice that he didn't want to recall at all, Noah was silent for a while, and then hung up the phone without hesitation. The next second, the mobile phone rang again. And Noah didn't know if it was a psychological effect, but he felt that the ringtone was quite urgent this time. Noah, who was speechless, picked up the phone again. Hey, aren't you going too far?" The person on the other side of the phone said in a helpless tone. "It's fine if you leave me without saying a word. As my most intimate existence, I believe that you will return to my side sooner or later. But you even hung up the phone. That's a little hurtful. My heart is broken into two halves. It's cold." At first glance, it was like a man was kissing his beloved woman sweetly. But who would have thought that the man who said such a sentence to Noah was holding a magic sword that would cause irreparable damage to people as long as they touched it, and waved it at Noah without hesitation? Well, Noah, who also didn't hesitate to use a punch to directly hit the other side into the depths of the ground, was not qualified to say this sentence. "You idiot, you don't look like the kind of guy who would call a friend to exchange pleasantries, right? That's why I'm wondering if you're planning to have a duel with me." Noah sneered back. "Is it strange to hang up on you like this? Well, that's not a bad idea, but you're my lifelong rival. I plan to spend the rest of my life slowly tasting you." "It would be too boring to end it so quickly," Tony said with a smile. "So you don't have to worry, although I'm not calling to exchange pleasantries, I'm not calling to fight, I just want to tell you something." Hearing this, Noah was puzzled at first, and then he thought of something. "What you're talking about, don't tell me you're referring to the Stone of Gorgon." Oh. Tony cried out happily. "In other words, the stone that can attract the Trinity Queen Athena is really with you." "Why?" Noah curled his lips. "Do you want it?" "If I can, of course I want it. It's a chance to fight with Her Majesty the Ancient Queen. I want it badly." Tony's voice became more or less serious. "However, I'm not the only one who has his eyes on it." Noah was stunned. "Sasha de Janstelvobon." Tony slowly uttered a name that made everyone in the magic world tremble. "Even if you have just become a God Slayer, you should have heard of this name, right?" Noah narrowed his eyes. Of course, Noah had heard of this name. And he had just become a God Slayer not long ago, when he was invited by Alice for a meeting. He heard from Erica and Liliana. As mentioned earlier, the Wise Men's Parliament began to study the deicide in order to protect the Queen of England from an ancient deicide who was very likely to be a danger to the Queen of England. That was how it developed into its current nature. This ancient God Slayer was the person Tony was talking about now, Sasha de Janstelvobon. 200 years ago, he had killed a god. Among all the kings who had killed gods, he was the strongest, oldest, and most capricious one, the God Slayer. It was said that this old man had killed no less than 10 gods, and he had the most authority of all the God Slayers. He was undoubtedly the strongest of all the God Slayers today. The only one who could match up to this old man was another deicide who lived in China for as long as he was. People usually called him Marquis Vauban. Combined with the previous words, Noah had already guessed the reason why Tony mentioned this name. As expected, Tony told Noah the guess in his heart. "I've received news that the old man is coming to Italy." Chapter 504. Today's oldest godslayer was heading to Italy and would arrive in a few days. This was the news that Tony brought to Noah. Troublesome characters are coming one after another, holding the phone, Noah sighed, and then asked Tony on the other side of the phone. That so-called old man is also coming for the stone of Gorgon. Other than that, there's no other reason for the old man to come to my turf, Tony said in a playful tone, which surprised Noah. After all, no matter what, with my relationship with him, it would not be surprising if we killed each other one day. What? Noah raised an eyebrow. Do you have a grudge against him? I don't know if it counts as a grudge, but there must be a grudge between us. Tony said indifferently. As you know, it hasn't been more than 5 years since I became a god slayer. The first god I killed was the cultic god king, Nuada. From that unlucky god, I usurped the authority of the demon sword. And the second god I killed was Siegfried. The authority of the steel barrier was seized from this god. Tony laughed heartily. However, this god was originally the god of disobedience that the old man summoned in a rather interesting way. It was originally his prey, but I stole it. Hearing this, Noah was speechless. Since Siegfried was the second god that Tony killed, it proved that before this, Tony was just a rookie who had just become a god slayer, right? He had just become a god slayer, and he dared to steal the god of disobedience that the oldest god slayer spent a lot of effort to summon. This guy was really an idiot, and his courage was boundless. That old man was a wanderer who basically had no desires other than appetite. Other than eating food, the only thing he pursued was fighting, right? At this moment, Tony seemed to be talking about himself, and his tone became more or less thought-provoking. So, I stole his prey, and he's quite upset with me. Now he's openly stepping into my territory. If he's not here to fight me, then he's here for the stone of Gorgon in your hand that can attract Athena. In other words, there was only one reason why Marquis Woburn, who was evaluated by Tony as having only a desire to fight, had come to Italy. Battle. As for whether they were here to settle scores with Tony or to take a fancy to Noah's prey, Tony was more inclined to believe the latter. I'm just a child to that old man, but gods are prey in his eyes. Compared to a child, that wanderer is undoubtedly more interested in prey, Tony said seriously. I'm here to remind you that you've been targeted by Athena, and now there's a ferocious old demon king who may come looking for you. You're working so hard, and as a good friend, I can't stand it. Come on, you're just saying that to persuade me to give you the stone of Gorgon, right? Noah's words directly exposed Tony's thoughts. Also, it's not just the ancient queen and the ancient godslayer who have their eyes on me. There's also you, an idiot who only knows how to fight other than eating. Don't say that. Undoubtedly, Tony was still smiling when his intentions were exposed. Anyway, there's an old demon king who's going to look for you, isn't there? You can have a good fight with him. How about you give me Athena? There's a serious contradiction in your words. Noah rolled his eyes. Since that old guy is after Athena like you, then the only thing he has his eyes on is the stone of Gorgon. If I give you the stone of Gorgon, then he'll turn around and look for you. To him, I'm a little brat who's younger than you, and he's even less likely to be interested in me, isn't that right? Tony obviously did not think of this, and was speechless for a moment, but he quickly said, I don't think of that kind of thing. I can't think of such a complicated thing. Anyway, if you give me the stone and that old guy comes, then we can have a fight together. That will definitely be very interesting. In other words, if the negotiation fails, you're going to act like an idiot. Noah sighed. If that's the case, then we're done. Wait. Tony seemed to realize something and hurriedly said. However, after knowing that Tony was not thinking of anything at all, and was just following his own thoughts and calling him without any suggestions for a solution, Noah would not waste his breath on this idiot. So, ignoring Tony's panicked voice, Noah hung up the phone. As soon as he hung up the phone, the expression on Noah's face slowly became thoughtful. Warband. Ha! Athena said that power was not the only thing that could be used as a weapon. As the goddess of wisdom, Athena's wisdom was also an unquestionable force. So, here's the problem. Athena's snake only fell into Noah's hands today, and not even a day had passed. In such a short time, it was reasonable for Tony to know that the Gorgon stone was in his hands. After all, this was Tony's territory, and Erica and Liliana had also reported this matter to the Copper and Black Cross, so it was not surprising that Tony would know. But how did that warband find out? Although Warband lived in the Balkans and was a neighbor of the Italian peninsula, they were separated by an ocean. It was impossible for him to know that Noah had the Gorgon stone in less than half a day, right? Therefore, Noah could only come up with one possibility. Athena, it's you, isn't it? Although they were both god-slayers and god-slayers were at most the same kind, not companions. Even humans would scheme against each other, let alone the god-slayers, who had terrible power and were absolutely capable of fighting for the world's territory. Noah suspected that it was Athena who deliberately spread the news, and even directly passed it on to Warband, so that Warband would come to him. Based on Noah's understanding of Warband, he was definitely the same as Tony. If Athena personally came to them and said to them, "If you want to duel with me, you have to help me regain my power," they would not hesitate to do so. Therefore, there were many ways for the goddess of wisdom to provoke Warband and lure him over. And even if people like Warband and Tony could not get the Gorgon stone from Noah, Athena could patiently wait for the opportunity to snatch the Gorgon stone back. Even if she failed, she could continue to regroup and lure other god-slayers over. Although they were unwilling to admit it, as Erica and Liliana thought in their hearts, the god-slayers were basically problematic people. If she wanted to provoke these people and use them, there were many ways to do so, right? Sure enough, a woman who is too smart is not easy to deal with, let alone a goddess. Noah could not help but complain out loud. Wouldn't it be better to be silly like Mira and Lisanna? Wouldn't that be cute? After that, Noah rubbed his eyebrows. I don't care, because of Tony and Athena, I didn't sleep last night. If I don't rest tonight, even if a god or a god-slayer comes to me, I won't have the energy to fight. After saying this, Noah glanced at the Gorgon stone next to his phone, stood up, and walked toward the bed. Just like that, 3 days passed. During these 3 days, Noah had been moving around the hotel and did not go far. Even if he knew that there were god-slayers and the god of disobedience watching him at the same time, Noah acted as if nothing had happened and tried to walk around as much as possible, trying to find some clues about the world fragment. For Noah, competing with the god-slayers and the god of disobedience was just an interlude in life, and finding the world fragment was the real goal. However, this pattern of action was really broken in the morning 3 days later. Because Noah received an extremely urgent call from the branch heads of the Copper Black Cross and Bronze Black Cross. My king! Miss Erica and Miss Liliana were taken away by Marquis Warband. Chapter 505. Whoosh! A strong wind blew from the sky towards the high-rise building, whistling through the air. On the rooftop of such a skyscraper, an old man was sitting on a luxurious chair that was extremely out of tune with the surroundings. It was impossible for him to appear on the rooftop of a skyscraper. He crossed his legs and closed his eyes, like an emperor taking a nap on the throne. His whole body exuded a terrifying sense of existence. The old man's appearance gave people a feeling of being full of wisdom. He had a wide forehead, deep eye sockets, and a very pale face. Anyone who saw him would think that the old man was an expert or a professor. His silver hair was neatly combed, and even his beard was very clean, very suitable for wearing a white coat. However, the rumors and deeds of the old man were absolutely not in line with his appearance. Because he was a real overlord. He would take the service of the people around him for granted and would be quite used to giving orders. Because he was a real demon. As long as he could satisfy his own selfish desires, the old man would not hesitate to destroy the human race even if it meant that he would do it. Sasha de Janstel-Vauban. Marquis. These two names were the names that people called the old man. The most ancient God-slayer today. This was him. Beside such a terrifying old demon, Erica and Liliana stood side by side. They did not talk, and there was no trace of being restrained on their bodies. Like maids serving the king, they just stood quietly on the side and fell into an indescribable silence. Then, what broke this indescribable silence was the extremely loud sound of a collision. Dong! As if intending to expel the heavy feeling of the entire space, the door of the rooftop was directly blown open. Against the roaring wind, Noah slowly walked up the stairs and came to the rooftop. Seeing Noah's arrival, Erica and Liliana did not show a happy expression. Instead, they laughed bitterly. So it's here after all. Erica shrugged. A meeting between kings. In such a situation, it's really hard to say whether they intend to have a talk or a duel, right? Liliana did not answer Erica's question, but there was a hint of helplessness and anxiety on her face. Just like what Erica had said. Under such circumstances, it was really hard to guarantee that the two people in front of him, who could make the entire magic world tremble with a casual stomp of their feet, wouldn't fight. If that was the case, it would be too terrifying. One was a terrible king who defeated the King of Swords of Italy as soon as he became a god-slayer, bringing catastrophic damage to Italy. One of them was the world's oldest, and most unpredictable, terrifying demon king who had met the former Queen of England out of interest. A meeting between two kings like this would definitely make anyone tremble in fear. However, the person involved didn't take this meeting seriously. Warbin's eyes were still closed. He rested his face on one hand and dozed off in the luxurious chair. Noah walked in unhurriedly, and he didn't even look at Warbin. His gaze immediately fell on Erica and Liliana, and the corners of his mouth curled up. You two are doing better than I thought. I thought you would at least have someone watching over you or tied up. You're overthinking it, Your Majesty. Erica revealed her usual gorgeous smile as if she didn't realize her current situation. Everyone in the world knows about Erica Brantley's bravery, but it's not sensible to run away in the face of a god-slayer. In fact, Erica and I weren't captured by the Marquis. The Marquis just appeared in front of us and threatened to take us with him. We followed him obediently. Liliana closed her eyes, and her expression was still serious. I'm really sorry. As Your Majesty's followers, we're really too lousy. A hint of indignance appeared on Liliana's pretty face, which Noah didn't miss. It seemed that when Warbin appeared, Liliana did want to resist, but she gave up in the end. It was because of Erica's persuasion. Rebelling against the ancient god-slayer is also an unwise thing to do. It will only delay the meeting of the two kings a little. Apart from that, it won't do anything else. Erica spoke her mind bluntly. She had no intention of hiding it at all. Besides, even without us, the Marquis can still meet Your Majesty whenever he wants. In that case, why do we have to do something unnecessary? With that said, Erica turned her gaze to Warbin, her tone carrying a hint of provocation. Am I right, Marquis? The Marquis. With this sentence as a switch, the atmosphere in the surroundings switched to a state of imminent conflict. That Paul Brantley has an interesting niece. Erica's intellectual voice that carried a hint of madness that others couldn't detect sounded faintly. It drowned out the strong wind and clearly entered the ears of everyone present. On the surface, that's what you say, but in fact, you don't have any intention of obeying me at all. You're like a lion that is locked in a cage, but will still wave its claws at me. It's rare for you to have such courage at such a young age. Warband opened his eyes as soon as he heard this. It was a pair of pale green eyes that glowed like emeralds and resembled a ferocious lone wolf. But that's what makes it interesting. Warband chuckled in a seemingly joyful manner. I hate dogs that only know how to obey. On the contrary, I love wolves that know how to resist. If you don't have the ability to resist, there's no need for me to even speak. Although you're a lioness, I'm very satisfied that you're baring your fangs at me. Just like you, the little girl from the Kranikar family over there isn't someone who will wag her tail at me. The two of you are really interesting. Very good. That's the only way you have value by my side. Warband turned his pale green eyes to Noah. A dangerous smile appeared on his aged face. You're an outrageously young king. Originally, I wouldn't have thought of coming to you since you've just become one of my kind for less than a month. But you have something that interests me. Can you give it to me? Warband's words were full of indisputable certainty. It wasn't because Warband was arrogant enough to think that as long as he spoke, Noah would listen to his orders and give him what he wanted. It was because Warband was confident that as long as Noah appeared in front of him, he wouldn't be able to get what he wanted. Even if he had to snatch it. Noah looked at Warband with a faint smile. He took out a badge and tossed it in his hand. So you're saying that you want me to give you what you want with just a few words? Warband immediately narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself. You're right. Although you're too young, you're still one of my kind. Since we're both kings, if I want something from you, it's only right that I give you something of equal value. How about this? Warband snapped his fingers as if he had thought of an idea. You don't seem to have your own territory, right? How about I give you the Balkan Peninsula where I'm currently living? As the kings of the god slayers, they usually had their own territories. For example, Doni was the chief of the entire Italy. Even if he did not rule, Italy was still his territory. Most of the other god slayers were the same when it came to this, and Warband was no exception. However, Warband did not like to stay in the same place for too long. Although the Balkan Peninsula was his territory, Warband would not feel the slightest bit of heartache if he were to give it away. This made Noah laugh, and it was an extremely mocking laugh. You're giving me something that you don't want in exchange for a god relic that can attract the highest level, the god of disobedience. Master Marquis, don't tell me you think such a deal will work. What do you want then? Warband's expression remained unchanged as he continued to ask. Treasure. Women. I can give you anyone's head even if it's mine. Is that so? Noah stroked his chin and clapped his hands all of a sudden. How about you give me your head then? The place fell silent all of a sudden. Erica and Liliana's eyes widened. The smile on Warband's face disappeared. You're getting carried away, kid. A terrifying aura rose from Warband's body. Chapter 506. You're too complacent, kid. Following these words, Warband's thin body suddenly erupted with a tremendous amount of curse power, which directly turned into a storm and pushed back the wind blowing in the surrounding buildings. At the same time, Warband's green eyes, which were staring at Noah, shone like gems. Under such circumstances, Noah felt an extremely strange curse power suddenly wrap around his body. Seeing that Warband's eyes flashed with green light and Noah did not react, Erica and Liliana were shocked. You can't. Erica immediately warned. You can't look at his eyes. Your Majesty. That's the authority called Sodom's pupil. It's one of Marquis Warband's authority. Liliana also hurriedly said. This authority can turn all living things within the Marquis line of sight into salt crystals. even if the God Slayer has an extremely strong resistance to curse power. Part of his body will be turned into salt when facing this authority. After all, it was a power that belonged to the category of authority, the true power of God. Even if the God Slayer had an extraordinary resistance to curse power, part of his body would be turned into salt if he looked directly at those evil eyes. At the very least, he should not look directly at those evil eyes. In that case, as a God Slayer, Noah should be able to more or less slow down the speed of his body being turned into salt, right? That was what Erica and Liliana thought. However, not only did Noah not look at Warband's eyes as Erica and Liliana had warned him, but he directly met Warband's evil eyes with a faint smile on his face. Bang! The next moment, only Noah and Warband could sense the curse power that had wrapped around Noah due to the activation of Sodom's pupil, suddenly exploded and dissipated. Even Warband was stunned when he noticed this. For ordinary people, Warband's eye of Sodom was an evil eye that was directly linked to death, but for a God Slayer, not only could it weaken its effects, but it would also not be too difficult to break through this authority if there were no accidents. But Noah didn't even use his curse power. How did he break Sodom's pupil just like that? Warband could not help but be surprised. Warband had no idea that Noah's physique was far more ridiculous than his strength. Noah had 3 special constitutions. Firstly, he could absorb all the power that entered his body without leaving a single drop behind. Secondly, he could eliminate all negative powers and side effects. Thirdly, he could automatically recover his magic power, curse power, like a world that operated freely. He had no weaknesses at all. It was precisely because of his physique that could eliminate all negative forces and side effects that Warband's pupils of Sodom was not even as useful as Yoju's magic eye for Noah. Therefore, to deal with Noah, he absolutely could not use negative powers such as curses, poisons, and weakening that would indirectly affect his body. If he wanted to deal with Noah, he had to directly attack Noah's body physically. It was absolutely useless to play some roundabout tricks. Although Warband didn't know what was going on, he didn't put too much hope in his pupils of Sodom. It was not an authority that was suitable to deal with the God Slayers and the God of disobedience. You have some ability. As a brat who was born less than a month ago, I'll give you my praise. Warband sat down on a luxurious chair in a calm manner, and the light shimmering in his green eyes disappeared, but his expression became even more dangerous. Then, I'll use my real strength a little. After saying that, Warband stretched out his hand and snapped his fingers. Whoosh! The surrounding gale suddenly became violent. In the sky, dark clouds appeared out of nowhere and began to fill the entire horizon, blocking out all the light, causing the world to become dim. Rumble! With the sound of thunder, strong winds, torrential rain, and lightning began to take effect in the dark clouds at the same time. That's the stormy storm. Erica's expression tensed up. Not only can it summon storms, but it can also summon thunder, lightning, and tornadoes. It can control the authority of wind, rain, thunder, and lightning. Hearing this, Noah curled his lips into a smile. In Noah's mind, the stone plate that was connected to the patterns of the 10 avatars suddenly turned and pointed to a pattern of a tornado falling from the sky. Snap! The next moment, Noah also snapped his fingers. The strong winds, lightning, and torrential rain that were rolling back and forth in the sky suddenly stopped. Even the pervasive dark cloud solidified. Whoosh! A violent whirlwind suddenly blew up from above the dark clouds. Like a vortex of air, it twisted the dark sky into a mess and blew away the thick dark clouds. As a result, the sky that was still cloudy a second ago suddenly became bright again as if it was a joke. What? Warband finally frowned. Seeing this, Noah withdrew his hand and said indifferently, "The authority of controlling wind, rain, thunder, and lightning is indeed amazing, but unfortunately, my authority can not only cause storms, but also control the sky. Your plan to use the authority from the sky is really a bad move. Is that so? Warband's face darkened and he sneered. Then let my hounds deal with you. After that, Warband waved his hand forcefully and the floor of the luxurious chair he was sitting on immediately trembled. A dark shadow spread out in all directions with Warband's position as the center. Not long after, gigantic wolves that were as large as horses, with hair as grayish-black as mice, and eyes that were similarly green emerged from the shadows. Their beastly eyes shone with a ferocious glint as they stared at Noah. That's the pack of greedy wolves, Liliana exclaimed. The authority of being able to summon dozens or even hundreds of giant wolves, Marquis Warband's first authority. As though to prove Liliana's words, the huge wolves let out a low growl that belonged solely to wild beasts. They tightened their bodies and abruptly shot forward, pouncing fiercely toward Noah's direction. Looking at the pack of wolves that covered him like raindrops, Noah narrowed his eyes. In his heart, the stone plate that was originally pointing at the image of the incarnation of the storm rotated again, and pointed at the image of a person in luxurious clothing with his arms open towards the sky, as if he wanted to embrace the entire sky. At this moment, a spell power that was slowly burning like flames burst out of Noah's body, causing Noah's eyes to shine with a dim light. Back off! A cold shout sounded from Noah's mouth, carrying a wave of spell power that reverberated like ripples. It surged in all directions and swept past the giant wolves. The ferocious giant wolves were like wolfhounds that had their necks grabbed. They all stopped and fell to the ground, unable to move at all. Seeing this scene, Warband first widened his eyes, then his expression became gloomy. Facing such a Warband, Noah calmly crossed his arms with a faint smile on his face. Is that all? Old mister. Warband's expression suddenly became extremely ugly. From start to finish, Warband had used 3 authorities. The Eye of Sodom was broken for no reason. The storm of raging waves was cleanly dispelled. Now, even the first authority, that Warband had obtained, the pack of greedy wolves, was controlled by the authority, turning Warband's most ferocious hounds into obedient and loyal dogs. As the oldest God-slayer, and the one who had always placed himself in a high position, how could Warband endure such humiliation? In the eyes of Erica and Liliana, this short battle left them speechless. After all, whether it was Noah or Warband, they had not moved even a centimeter from their original positions from beginning to end. Under such circumstances, the 2 kings had displayed a power that ordinary humans could not resist. How could this not make people tremble in fear? Of course, what surprised Erica and Liliana the most was the power that Noah had displayed. As the youngest king in the world today, Noah was at ease even when facing the oldest demon king. With a 200-year age gap, Noah had the upper hand. Chapter 507. Awoo! The howls of the wolves rose and fell one after another, echoing constantly on the rooftop. But if one listened carefully, they would discover that not only did these howls not have the slightest trace of ferocity, but they were also full of fear. Although they were tamed beasts summoned by Warband with his authority, the large group of giant wolves in front of him were obviously not at the level of divine beasts. They were only much stronger than ordinary wolves, and they didn't even have any special powers. Let alone Noah, even Erica or Liliana should be able to deal with such a group of wolves, right? Therefore, under the control of Noah's priest incarnation, even if they were unwilling, the large group of giant wolves in front of him howled in fear and trembled. They began to retreat one after another as if they had met their natural enemy. This made Warband's expression turn even uglier. He had placed himself in a high position, but all his means were effortlessly broken by the other party. There was nothing better than this fact to show who had the upper hand in terms of power. Looking at Noah's calm appearance, Warband finally straightened his body slowly. It was as if a wild wolf that had been dozing off just now had suddenly woken up and found its prey. It wouldn't be strange for it to be in a state where it didn't know when it would pounce forward. It seems that I've underestimated you, kid. Warbin's eyes became extremely aggressive as he stared at Noah. I've heard some rumors about you. I heard that you became the king after killing 2 of the highest level gods of disobedience not long ago. But no matter what, you're just a new king who was born less than a month ago. Even if you killed 2 gods at the same time, you're just an immature kid with 2-inch authorities. I didn't pay much attention to you. But now, it seems that I've indeed made a mistake that I shouldn't have. The corners of Warbin's mouth curled into a terrifying arc. His pale green eyes flickered like a wild wolf at night, sending chills down one's spine. Even if you're just an immature kid, you're still a king. You can kill gods, so you're on the same level as me. I shouldn't have underestimated you. You're indeed qualified to be my prey. I've made the right choice coming here. Even if I can't kill Athena, I should be able to have fun with you. Warbin's words became more and more impassioned. Obviously, Warbin's fighting spirit had been aroused by Noah. This caused Noah to glance at Warbin, and he suddenly changed the topic of the conversation. I know that you're here because Athena instigated you, right? Warbin's movements paused. Under Warbin's gaze, Noah spoke indifferently. Originally, I wasn't interested in fighting with Athena at all. I just wanted to fulfill my so-called responsibility as a king. If someone was willing to take this job, other than Tony, who only knows how to cause trouble, I'd be more than happy to do it. If you really just want to fight a powerful god and come to me for the stone of Gorgon, then I don't mind giving it to you. Noah said sarcastically. It's a pity that as long as you came to me and asked, I would have seriously considered it and let you achieve your goal. However, you didn't take the initiative to come to me and discuss it with me. Instead, you kidnapped the people around me and made me come to you on my own accord to show you that you're superior. This kind of meaningless method is probably referring to people like you who take advantage of their seniority, right? But you've forgotten, Warbin. Noah put the stone of Gorgon in his hand into the pocket of his clothes, slowly raised his head, and looked straight at Warbin. In the end, the reason why the God-slayers are kings is because humans can't resist them. In the end, they still rely on their own strength. Only the strength of one's strength determines one's status, not age. You look down on me because I've only been a God-slayer for a short time. You look down on me because I don't have much power. Noah's sarcastic voice resounded through the sky. Then let me, a young man, tell you whether it's time for an old man who has lived for 200 years to retire and lie in his coffin. As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying power suddenly burst out from Warbin's body and spread over the entire rooftop. Warbin's face was as ugly as it could be, and there was a real murderous intent in his eyes as he stared at Noah. Good boy. You're good. In the low roar full of anger, the curse power on Warbin's body surged into the sky like a flame soaring into the sky. Then let me see if you, a so-called young man, have the ability to send an old man like me to my coffin. After that, Warbin stood up from the luxurious chair and let out a terrifying roar. Ha-Iowa dash. In the inhuman roar, Warbin's body swelled up, and every part of his body bulged outwards. Rip. The clothes on Warbin's body were torn apart very neatly. As his body continued to swell, Warbin's height soon exceeded 5 meters, and it was still growing. My pack of greedy wolves can summon more than just a pack of wolves. I can also transform into a werewolf like you. Let me see if your strength is as powerful as your mouth. Boy. Warbin, whose body was still expanding, could not wait to raise his huge wolf claws as he roared. With a fierce gust of wind, he swung them in Noah's direction. Looking at the incoming sharp claws, Noah closed his eyes. Wells Lana had an incarnation called Camel. No matter where it was, a camel that could cross the desert was synonymous with a strong body and amazing endurance. When Welslana used the camel incarnation, not only could he obtain fighting ability that surpassed his wild instincts and intuition, but it could also increase his endurance and leg strength. Even if he suffered a serious blow, it could reduce the pain and quickly stop the bleeding, allowing Welslana to continue fighting no matter how much damage he suffered. As for Mekhl, he was the representative of the dragon slayers. Those who knew about Mekhl's mythology would know that the Mediterranean god King Mekhl had another name. Baal. He was a powerful existence that was even recorded in the Bible. Mekhl's true form was Baal. Only in the Mediterranean would this famous god king be called Mekhl. When mentioning Baal, one could not ignore Baal's enemy, Dragon King Yamu. The reason why Mekhl, whose true form was Baal, was able to become the king of gods was because in the mythology, he lured Dragon King Yamu away from his throne and killed him. Through this crusade, Mekhl successfully sat on the throne of the god king. Therefore, Mekhl was a typical dragon slayer, the natural enemy of all dragons. With the help of Noah's constitution, Welslana's camel and Mekhl's dragon slayer merged, giving birth to the dragonborn incarnation. Draconian, combining the incarnation of Welslana's camel and the dragon slayer's authority. Using this incarnation, not only can one obtain a close combat ability that surpasses one's wildness and intuition, but it can also transform one's body into that of a dragon, obtaining a body that is comparable to a giant dragon's. To a certain extent, it can restrain dragon-type creatures and cause great damage to them. The result of the fusion of the camel, which represented a strong body and endurance, and the natural enemy of dragons, the dragon slayer, was that while retaining the camel's ability to surpass their wildness and intuition, as well as the dragon slayer's ability to restrain dragons, it also gave birth to the ability to transform into a dragon's body. In the case of using the incarnation of the draconian, Noah could basically be regarded as a humanoid dragon with terrifying close combat ability, and he could also produce great lethality to his own kind. All evildoers, be afraid of my power. Now, I shall obtain the majesty of 10 mountains, the strength of 100 rivers, and the strength of 1,000 giant dragons. The majestic me shall raise the ferocious power to slay dragons. After chanting the words to release the incarnation, the stone plate in Noah's heart suddenly turned and pointed to a human-like dragon pattern that stood upright. A powerful force gushed out from Noah's body. The giant wolf's sharp claws swung down and fell on Noah's body. Bang! At the top of the building, the rooftop suddenly shook like an explosion, stirring up thick smoke and wind. Chapter 508. Bam! With a thunderous boom, the rooftop of the tall building exploded into a burst of thick smoke and strong winds, splashing in all directions like a blooming wave. Ah! Under the onslaught of the violent wind, 2 slender figures flew out from the blooming smoke and dust. They subconsciously let out a cry of surprise. Their hands were still blocking in front of their bodies. Obviously, they were blown away by the strong wind that blew them away. They were Erica and Liliana. Erica and Liliana, who were blown out of the rooftop of the building, were startled at first, but they quickly reacted. Erica adjusted her body in midair. After stabilizing her body, she stomped her feet down as if she was stepping on air. Fly, boots of Hermes. After a short chant, a crimson magic array fluctuated under Erica's feet and turned into a platform. Thump thump thump. Erica tapped her feet in the air again and again. Every time she tapped her feet, a crimson magic circle would ripple under her feet, allowing Erica, who had used leap, to retreat quickly in midair as if she were walking on flat ground. Compared to Erica, Liliana was much more straightforward. She didn't even need to adjust her posture before she chanted the incantation. Wings of Artemis, through the night, please grant me the privilege of flying in the Tao of heaven." As soon as her voice trailed off, the outline of Liliana's body was covered by a layer of blue halo, causing her body to suddenly stop in midair and float up as light as a feather. It was the flight magic that only orthodox witches could use. Erica and Liliana, who used the leap and flight magic respectively, almost subconsciously chose to stay away from the building that had turned into a battlefield. They landed on the rooftop of another building and quickly raised their heads to look at the building in front of them. Boom! Just as a strong gust of wind and a thick cloud of dust rose from the rooftop, another muffled sound rang out. It was as if it had directly hit one's heart, causing one's heart to shrink. This made the violent gust of wind even more terrifying. Immediately after, a figure and a huge wolf shadow respectively protruded out from the thick smoke and dust. Rubbing against the air, they landed on the ground with a sharp sound of breaking through the air. Bang! From Erica and Liliana's direction, they could clearly see that the ordinary-sized figure stabilized himself at the critical moment and landed on the ground with his feet. With a muffled thud, he fell to the ground as if he had fallen from 1,000 pounds, causing the ground to crack like a spider web. Bang! As for the huge wolf shadow, it wasn't as agile as the human-sized figure. Its huge body suddenly smashed into the ground, stirring up a burst of gravel and causing the ground to explode, turning into a crater the size of a house. Woo dash. Even so, the huge werewolf quickly got up from the crater and roared at the sky. Except for the dust on his body, he wasn't injured at all. As far as the result was concerned, neither Noah nor Warban was able to determine a clear winner in this first real head-on confrontation. Except for the way one of them landed on the ground in an extremely gorgeous manner and the other in a more embarrassing manner, there was basically no difference between them. Undoubtedly, they had fallen from a building that was at least 100 meters high, but the two kings of the deicide were not injured at all. This was enough to prove the inhuman level of the deicide. However, Noah relied on his strong physique that was comparable to that of a giant dragon in the form of a dragon man to achieve this, while Warban relied on his werewolf form to strengthen his body, which was not inferior to Noah's. Except for the previous brief confrontation where they didn't really use their full strength, this could be regarded as the first real confrontation between Noah and Warban. But as soon as they met face to face, the air was already filled with a heavy pressure that was almost suffocating. It was caused by the unimaginably huge spell power that rose from Noah and Warban. Rumble. At this time, the sound of thunder came from the sky again. Thick dark clouds covered the whole sky, and dazzling lightning flashed. Whoosh! The wind began to howl. Whoosh! A torrential rain poured down and instantly enveloped the whole world, soaking the ground in a short period of time. Noah, who maintained a squatting posture with one hand on the ground, raised his head. Drenched in the cold rain, he cast his gaze at the giant wolf howling at the sky in front of him. Is this one of your tricks again? After all, with the storm and raging waves that could control wind, rain, thunder, and lightning, Warban could summon a storm at any time. If Noah transformed into the incarnation of the storm, he could still disperse the rain and thunder clouds. But without the rain and thunder clouds, Warban's storm and raging waves could at most not summon a storm, but he should still be able to control lightning and tornadoes. Warban was naturally aware of this. His huge body, which had expanded to more than 30 meters tall, slightly straightened. A pair of wolf eyes stared at Noah, revealing the sharp teeth hidden deep in his mouth. I can't help it. I become like this when I'm excited. This also proves that you're qualified to make me take you seriously. Boy, feel honored. Are you still trying to take advantage of your seniority? Noah sneered. Then let me shut your ugly wolf mouth. After that, Noah crouched down, and with a bang, he crushed the spiderweb-like cracks on the ground. His body shot out like an arrow from a bow. Come on. Boy. Warban, who had transformed into a 30-meter-tall werewolf, also let out a roar of pleasure. His huge hind legs suddenly stomped on the ground, and like a real wild wolf, he pounced forward. The man and the wolf met in the blink of an eye. One raised his fist and swung it at the tall giant wolf, while the other raised his huge wolf claws and mercilessly swung them at the other. Dong! The completely disproportionate fist and the sharp claw collided in midair, actually causing a loud boom, causing the wind and dust to blow up once again. The man and the wolf, who had exchanged a blow, seemed to have hit an immovable mountain at the same time. Their bodies were bounced back at a faster speed than when they came. Da-da-da-da. Noah's figure nimbly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot, removing the force acting on his body with each tap of his foot. Da-da-da-da. Warban retreated repeatedly amidst a series of heavy footsteps, and it was not until he retreated a few dozen meters that he stabilized his body. Even if their sizes were disproportionate, the two of them seemed to be on par with each other in terms of physical strength, which was incredible. However, it was not strange at all when one thought about it. Warban's body had expanded to a height of 30 meters, and presumably, the strength of his body was no weaker than that of a giant dragon. Noah was simply a giant dragon in human form, and when it came to physical strength, he was naturally not at a disadvantage at all. "You're quite strong, boy," Warban, who had stabilized his body, growled. "In that case, my hounds seem to be useless against you. Let my servants take care of you." As if in response to Warban's words, the next moment, the ground around Warban suddenly trembled, and small hills rose up. Under Noah's astonished gaze, people wearing worn-out armor and ancient cloaks emerged from the hills, holding all kinds of weapons in their hands, and appeared around Warban. "This is also my power." The bastards of the Sage Council seem to call it the Servant of Death. It's a loyal servant who can summon the people I've personally killed in the past in the form of the living dead. They are absolutely obedient to me. Warban's cheerful voice rang out from the huge wolf's mouth. "Of course, I've killed more than tens of millions of people. These are the good ones I've specially selected. Each of them is at the level of the two little girls next to you. Can your spirit of speech work on so many servants?" Noah immediately frowned. If every one of them had the level of a grand knight like Erica and Liliana, then it would not be a problem for Noah's priest incarnation to control a dozen or even dozens of them. However, if there were more than 100 of them, it would be hard to say. Chapter 509. In fact, it was best to use the spirit of the priest's incarnation on dead objects. After all, dead objects wouldn't struggle or refuse, and it was much easier to control them. For example, when Welslana was fighting with Noah, he didn't use the spirit of the youth incarnation to deal with Noah. Instead, he used it to split the waves and form sand swords. That would be very easy. As for living creatures, they would more or less struggle. The harder the subject of the spirit of dominant speech struggles, the weaker the effect of the spirit of dominant speech will be. The stronger the curse power in the target's body, the weaker the effect of the spirit of control would be. Naturally, the more objects that needed to be controlled, the more the effect of the spirit of control would be spread out, and thus it would be weaker. In the underground ruins, Noah only needed to control one object. Therefore, even if this object was a divine beast that could only be dealt with by the peak human paladins, Noah could still control it. Although the number of wolves that Warban summoned through the power of the greedy wolf pack was large, it was only a group of larger wolves, and it wasn't difficult to control them. However, the past resurrected under the control of the Servant of Death's cage. These capable people who died under Warban's hands were different. Each of them was a powerhouse comparable to a grand knight. Some had bodies that had been tempered thousands of times. Some had curse power that had been cultivated for a lifetime. Some of them had strong martial arts skills. Some of them had learned high-level spells. None of them were ordinary people. Noah could still use the priest's spirit of control to control a dozen, 20, or even dozens of such people. However, Warban had summoned at least 100 servants of death, which was a bit beyond the range of the priest incarnation's spirit of control. After all, Warban had lived for at least 200 years, and had killed at least 1,000 if not tens of thousands of people. Otherwise, he wouldn't be called the most terrifying demon king. It wasn't surprising that there were hundreds of experts specially selected from these dead, no matter how few there were. Come. Control another one for me to see. Warban laughed out loud. Go. My servants. As soon as Warban finished his words, the servants of death, who were exuding an aura of death, moved in unison like zombies being controlled. Some took a step back and raised their staff-like weapons, while others raised their sabers, swords, and spears. They rushed toward Noah with nimble footsteps that did not resemble those of the dead. From the corner of his eyes, Noah glanced at the servants of death that were swarming towards him, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes. Don't tell me you think I can't deal with them just because I can't control them. With that said, the servants of death swarmed forward and surrounded Noah, drowning him in the sea of people. However, in the next moment, a vigorous aura surged out from the crowd. Bang! Accompanied by a dull thud, the crowd that drowned Noah was pushed back a distance. Then, a figure in the middle of the crowd brought about a burst of oppressive wind. He lifted a leg, his body spun like a windmill, and kicked out towards the surroundings. Clang! The windmill-like leg was like a heavy piece of iron, landing one by one on the sharp weapons in the hands of the servants of death. Sparks flew wherever it passed, and the weapons in the hands of the servants of death were shaken out of their hands, causing them to lose their balance. The windmill-like figure suddenly stopped spinning, and the soles of his feet suddenly touched the ground. He almost turned into an afterimage, shuttling back and forth among the servants of death. Bang! 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 Suddenly, as the afterimage shuttled back and forth, a series of dull thuds sounded continuously. Every time it sounded, a servant of death would be sent flying like a rubber ball, shooting backward and landing heavily on the ground. What? Warban, who had transformed into a giant wolf, looked at all this in astonishment. Although he had turned into an afterimage, Warban could still clearly see Noah's movements. Therefore, Warban could clearly see that the powerhouses who were at the level of Grand Knights when they were alive were not able to react to Noah's speed. Instead, they were easily defeated by Noah's punches and kicks, and then sent flying with punches and kicks. That is to say, Noah had defeated all those who were considered elites in the magic world, except for paladins, with just a few punches and kicks. He actually has that level of martial arts. Is it his own skill? Or is it the power of authority? Or both? Warban was speechless. Is he the same type of martial artist as that freakishly strong woman? How annoying! Just as Warban began to feel unhappy because he thought of a certain old enemy, the afterimage shuttling among the servants of death suddenly flashed and stopped, exposing Noah's figure in the air again. At this time, the servants of death were already lying all over the ground. Wolves and dead people. You can summon so many things, and all of them are so tasteless. Noah said sarcastically. Can't you show me something interesting? Do you want to see something interesting? Warban's wolf-like face revealed a sinister smile. Then try this. In the sky, the rolling dark clouds suddenly spun violently like a whirlpool. Whoosh! The howling winds in the surroundings began to intensify, becoming as strong as a typhoon. Whoosh! The rain became denser, and the torrential rain began to pour down. Rumble! Following that, a low rumble of thunder resounded in the sky. Dazzling bolts of lightning descended from the whirlpool-like dark clouds. They rubbed against the air and brought about bursts of dazzling light. They flashed through the air and continuously fell to the ground. Boom, 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 boom. The lightning bolts fell to the ground one after another. The concrete used as the building material for the asphalt road exploded due to the strong impact. The solid ground was ravaged by the falling lightning bolts. It was like a battlefield buried with landmines, continuously producing violent explosions. Under such circumstances, the lightning bolts that fell from the sky and ravaged the ground approached Noah. Seeing this, Noah smiled. Just like when he summoned the rain and thunder clouds on the rooftop, Warban made another bad move. Warban thought that Noah could control the sky because he was using Mechal's power as the god of the sky. Even if the rain and thunder clouds in the sky were dispelled, he could still summon lightning to attack Noah. Although it did affect him, it was not to the point where he could not cause any harm. However, Warban certainly did not know that not only could Noah control the sky, he could also summon storms, and he could also summon lightning. Velaslana had the incarnation of a goat. The horned goat was a sacred beast with a powerful spell. Since ancient times, the existence of a horn was a symbol of a special spell. The priests and kings of primitive religions would wear horned hats or helmets when they held religious ceremonies. The point was to prove that the person had power. Therefore, most of the horned deer, cow, and goat were worshipped as sacred beasts. This was a trace of ancient beliefs. For example, it was often said among the Indo-European horsemen that they would compare goat to lightning in the sky. The most famous god of the sky, Zeus, was also deeply related to goat and had something in common with the myth of the horse that carried the sun. Therefore, when Velaslana used the incarnation of a goat, he could summon lightning. And Mechal was a god of the sky like Zeus, who could also turn into lightning. Thunder was an incarnation formed by combining Velaslana's goat incarnation and Mechal's lightning power. It could summon thunderclouds that formed lightning, and it could also turn the user into lightning and gain the ability to summon lightning. With the incarnation of thunder, Noah's ability to summon lightning was definitely above Warban's. I am the conqueror who can defeat 1,000 with 100, 10,000 with 1,000, and 10,000 with 10,000. Now, for me who is on the side of justice, please shine brightly and give me divine power. As the words echoed, the stone plate in Noah's heart turned again and pointed to a lightning pattern. Beep, beep, beep. The next moment, dazzling lightning flashed on Noah's body. Chapter 5:10. Beep, beep, beep. Amidst the intense electric shocks, Noah's entire body flashed with dazzling electric arcs, like electric snakes darting back and forth, constantly wandering around Noah's body. Almost at the same time, the violent lightning that fell from the sky and constantly hit the ground, approaching Noah, also arrived in front of Noah. Facing the continuous flashing violent lightning, Noah only made one move. Reach out. Hum. The approaching wild lightning suddenly stagnated in front of Noah's palm. Then, it twisted, turned into a ball, and gathered in front of Noah's palm. Seeing this scene, Warban was shocked. That kid can also use the power of thunder and lightning. Right. Mechar was the king of the gods who controlled storms, lightning, and the sky. Since the kid who killed Mechar had usurped the power of the king of gods, it was not strange that he could control wind, rain, thunder, and lightning, just like himself. But if that was the case, then what about the kid's other powers? He cracked the strange ability of the evil eye that could turn people into salt crystals, dominated the wolf pack, and had the physical ability to compete with himself in the form of a giant wolf. It was very likely that he even had the ability to bring about powerful martial arts. With so many abilities, how did the kid who only killed 2 gods do it? Is this the interesting thing you showed me? While Warban was still in shock, Noah's faint laughter entered his ears. If that's the case, I'm sorry, but I don't think it's interesting at all. You'd better take it back and play with it yourself. After saying that, Noah slowly raised the huge plasma ball that had gathered all the wild thunderbolts above his head, allowing the huge thunderbolts to follow his movements and draw a gorgeous trajectory in the air. Boom! Immediately, the lightning ball that gathered in Noah's hand suddenly exploded, turning into violent lightning. With a burst of sharp sonic booms, it rushed in Warbin's direction. Warbin's pupils contracted, and when he came to his senses, he reflexively crossed his wolf claws in front of him. The overwhelming lightning that enveloped Warbin immediately fell on his body. Boom! Following a loud boom, Warbin's massive wolf body was buried by the violent lightning. Arcs of electricity and lightning splashed in all directions, causing dust and strong winds to spread. Warbin's furious roar resounded from the center of the dust and wind filled with electric arcs and flashes of lightning. "Is that all? Brat!" Hearing Warbin's angry and provocative words, Noah's eyes turned cold. "Of course, even if you're satisfied, I won't stop. I'll give you an extra big treat." After saying that, Noah closed his eyes, and the lightning flashing on his body disappeared. In Noah's heart, the outline of the stone plate, which was connected to the images of the 10 incarnations, suddenly spun. In an instant, it pointed to the image of a lone wolf howling at the sky. Clang! An astonishing curse power burst out of Noah's body, causing the surrounding air to shake violently and wail. "Thou hast violated the contract and brought evil to the world. The Lord says, sinners must be punished. Their backs will be shattered, their bones, hair, and brains dug out, and their blood and soil will be trampled on. If I can't get close to you, then I'll follow the Lord's words and give the person who violated the contract a hammer of destruction." At this moment, the space around Noah wailed as if it couldn't bear the burden, and it started to tremble and collapse. Crack! The space behind Noah suddenly cracked, and a huge crack appeared. Crack, crack. The crack continued to expand, and it didn't take long for it to expand to the point where it was taller than Warbin's body, exposing a dazzling golden space inside. In the next second, a pair of beastly eyes lit up in the golden space. Roar! With a resounding roar from ancient times, a golden wolf comparable in size to Warbin emerged from the golden space. As if it had broken free from a cage, it opened the crack in the space and leaped out. Without the slightest hesitation, the huge golden wolf tightened its 4 limbs and abruptly stomped on the ground. Its body shot out like a bullet, transforming into a huge bright meteor that suddenly rushed into the thick smoke and dust that was filled with electric arcs, lightning, and strong winds. Boom! The sound of the collision resounded through the sky. Whoosh! The violent wind and waves that seemed to destroy the world surged in all directions like a tide, digging up the concrete on the ground, blowing away the vehicles, smashing the windows, and causing the walls of the surrounding buildings to begin to crack. The situation became precarious. Even Noah raised a hand to block in front of him, withstanding the violent wind and waves, and stared ahead without shifting his gaze, not even for a moment. Golden Wolf Bo was an incarnation formed by fusing the incarnation of Welleslana's mountain boar with the crush magic, which could summon Bo. Under this incarnation, Bo not only had its own original transformation ability, but also had the powerful charging ability of the mountain boar incarnation, which could create a shockwave that could crush everything. During the period of using this incarnation, the user himself could also obtain the ability to crush everything. As a fantasy breed that only existed in myths and fantasies, after fusing with the mountain boar incarnation, Bo's current existence had become somewhat unclear. Bo was originally a variant of a fantasy breed. As a fantasy breed, it didn't have a physical body, but an existence like a soul materialized. In this regard, Bo should be classified as a fantasy beast, but in terms of strength, under the influence of the world fragment, Bo had already far surpassed the level of a fantasy beast, even surpassing the peak of a dragon and reaching the divine beast stage. In this world, divine beasts were the beasts of God, or the magical beasts, evil beasts, and holy beasts that only existed in myths and legends. The concept was somewhat similar to that of a fantasy breed. After fusing with the mountain boar incarnation, Bio should still be classified as a fantasy breed in terms of type classification, but its strength had once again greatly increased. Welleslana's mountain boar incarnation was synonymous with destruction and strength. With this incarnation, Welleslana could summon a boar that was comparable in size to a tall building. It could crush all targets, and it could also send out shock waves that destroyed everything in its path. Therefore, Noah's crush also turned into a pure ability and fused with it. After fusing with the mountain boar incarnation, Bio, who was originally good at speed, transformed into a terrifying existence with strength, speed, destruction, and crush. As a result, Bio impressively became a beast that could compete with the God Slayer and the God of Disobedience. Even if the opponent was the God Slayer, who used authority, it still wouldn't be at a disadvantage. However, after fusing with the mountain boar and crush, Bio's way of existence had become different. If in the past, Bio used Noah as the core and was attached to Noah's body, equivalent to an existence like Noah's doppelganger, then now, this nature had become even more complete. Now, Bio was just a soul with self-consciousness, and usually slept in the depths of Noah's soul. Only when Noah used the golden wolf incarnation and provided a large amount of curse power would Bio's soul consciousness be awakened, and with the help of this large amount of curse power, the soul would materialize and appear on the ground. In other words, if Noah didn't provide the curse power, Bio would only have a soul, but he wouldn't be able to materialize his soul and form a body. In addition, Bio still used Noah as the core of his life, so his soul had already attached to Noah's soul, which was equivalent to fusing together. Therefore, Bio could no longer be independent, nor would he have the idea of being independent. After all, Noah and Bio were equivalent to sharing the same soul, but they had different consciousnesses. Simply put, it was like having dual personalities, and they could be treated as one person. Therefore, only Noah knew how terrifying it was to be hit by Bio's attack. Noah believed that even Warban would have to suffer from Bio's attack. And the facts had indeed proven all of this. After an unknown amount of time, the storm-like waves dissipated. At the center of the impact, Bio had returned to his previous size. At Bio's feet, an old man covered in blood was lying there. Chapter 5:11. Paw. 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 Amidst the crisp sounds, the gravel, rocks, glass, and even vehicles that were swept into the air by the violent wind and waves just now fell to the ground one by one, stirring up endless crashing sounds. Compared to not long ago, this area had almost changed drastically. The ground was riddled with holes under the ravaging of the violent thunder and was full of potholes. The surrounding buildings, where there should have been glass, were all empty. Even the walls were cracked, with cracks appearing like spider webs. Some of them were even on the verge of collapsing. The vehicles, street lamps, and concrete on the road were all twisted in a disheveled manner. It was as if they had just been hit by a big explosion, and there were scorch marks everywhere. Even the air was filled with the smell of smoke, which was very pungent. Anyone who came here and saw such a scene would definitely suspect that the army of some country had just attacked this place with the flames of war, turning this place into a hellish battlefield. Fortunately, before coming here, Noah, who was fully mentally prepared, had ordered the two people in charge of the copper black cross and the bronze black cross branches in this city in advance to evacuate the crowd. Only then could Noah let go of his hands and feet and fight to his heart's content. At this moment, in the center of this place that seemed to have been visited by the flames of war, a golden wolf with dazzling golden fur all over its body allowed its body hair to flutter in the wind. One of its forelimbs was forcefully stepping on the chest of an old man who was covered in wounds and blood. Bio's gem-like emerald eyes did not have the ferocity and madness that were unique to other beasts. Bio was like a sacred golden wolf from ancient times, looking down at Warban, who was covered in blood. This scene was shockingly beautiful. Warban naturally saw the golden beast that was stepping on his chest with its forelimbs. If it were in the past, Warban would definitely have been enraged by his current sorry state. However, looking at the golden beast standing on his body and looking down at him from above, Warban's expression changed, and he actually seemed to be ecstatic. There's actually such a wolf in this world. The first god that Warban killed was the god of disobedience, who had a close relationship with wolves. And Warban also had an extreme preference for wolves. It was not just a matter of personal preference, but also because before Warban became a god slayer, he had been like a lone wolf, wandering everywhere. He did not care about the beauty of the world, and the only thing left in his heart was the appetite to satisfy his stomach and the lust for battle for fun. Therefore, Warban had a preference for wolves, and he also liked wolves. Under such circumstances, the sacred golden wolf Bio, who was like a king from ancient times, was simply an ideal existence for Warban. Even though he was covered in wounds, Warban still could not move his eyes away from Bio, and he even let out an extremely delighted sound. Boy, so you also have a wolf, so you're also a wolf. So even though you've just reincarnated, you still managed to bite me back. I, Warban, have made the mistake of not being able to see the wolf in my opponent. I'm really old and muddle-headed. Hearing Warban's delighted voice, Noah came in front of Warban. Through Bio's sturdy body, he looked at Warban, whose face was covered in blood, with a calm expression. So you're saying that you admit defeat? Admit defeat? Warban's pale green evil eyes turned to Noah, and he suddenly smiled. That smile was like that of a ferocious beast that had been seriously injured, and it was extremely ferocious. That's right, I'll let you win the first round. Let's start the second round. Hearing this, Noah's eyes narrowed, and without any warning, he stomped on the ground and retreated rapidly. Bio also seemed to have noticed something, and he did not hesitate to give up suppressing Warban. His body burned like flames, and he turned into a stream of light that drew a perfect trajectory in the air, covering Noah's body as he swept into the distance. At the same time, Warban's body suddenly swelled, and his entire body surged with a frenzied curse power. His entire body exploded in the expansion of the curse power. Dong! With the explosion of Warban's body, all the powerful curse power belonging to the god slayer turned into monstrous flames that rushed in all directions and instantly covered the surroundings. Amidst the bone-chilling noises, the ground, buildings, and all sorts of existences that were covered by the sea of flames gradually melted like candles that had been burned out. Plumes of thick smoke rose into the sky. A bright stream of light swept across the space, avoiding the oncoming waves of flames. It was not until the spreading waves of flames stopped that the stream of light stopped, allowing Noah and Bio to emerge from the strong light. Bio, who was as tall as Noah and as big as a horse, stood behind Noah like a loyal guard. His beautiful pair of beastly eyes stared at the sea of flames in front of him, and his body was tense, ready to pounce forward at any time. Noah stood in front of Bio with one hand on Bio's neck as if he was comforting him. However, his eyes were also staring straight ahead. There was more or less astonishment in his eyes. That old guy actually detonated his own curse power? Detonated his curse power. In layman's terms, it was self-destruction. Just like lighting a fire in gasoline, Warban detonated the curse power in his body and self-destructed. Of course, after self-destructing, Warban would not be alive. However, Noah did not think that Warban would die just like that. Hence, Noah and Bio both stared at the sea of flames that was constantly burning the ground and buildings in front of them, and the vigilance in their hearts was raised to the highest level. Not long after, there was finally a slight change in the sea of flames. Under the gaze of the man and the beast, a pile of sand suddenly spread out and gathered in front of the sea of flames, condensing into a human figure. How long has it been since I was resurrected like this? The sand that had condensed into a human figure gradually turned into Warban's appearance, and the ancient demon king whose eyes were flickering with a green light was imprinted in Noah's eyes again. I have to say, kid, you've comforted my boredom and brought me satisfaction that is definitely not inferior to fighting the Trinity of Athena. So, whether victory or prey, it's all yours. Of course. A ferocious smile appeared on Warban's face. As compensation, you have to accompany me well. Bio, who was behind Noah, had a fierce look in his eyes. Just as he was about to step forward, Noah raised his hand and stopped him. Noah stared at the resurrected Warban. Noticing that Warban wasn't injured at all, Noah spoke indifferently. You're no match for me now, right? The ferocious smile on Warban's face froze. I didn't expect you to have the authority to resurrect, but you don't seem to be able to resurrect without paying a price. Noah seemed to have seen through everything about Warban as he quietly narrated. Your breathing has obviously become a lot more rapid, and your body has fallen into a weakened state. Even your curse power has weakened by more than half. In your current state, you can at most use about 70% of your strength. With that, Noah looked at Warban. And I can even defeat you at your peak. You don't think that you can do anything to me with only 70% of your strength now, do you? Kid, you're still too young. Unexpectedly, not only did Warban not waver, he even sneered. Indeed, I underestimated you before. Your strength is not inferior to mine, and you have this kind of ability as soon as you become a king. Even among all the kings, you're special. But you have to remember, kid, we can't be judged by human standards. Compared to humans and gods, we're more like beasts. For humans, the opponent being seriously injured is a great advantage, but for beasts, being injured only makes them more dangerous and terrifying than before. Warban opened his hands with a fearless smile on his face. Even if my strength is only 70% of my peak, you can look down on me if you want, as long as you're not afraid that I'll bite you later. This time, Noah was silent. At this moment, a voice reverberated. Indeed. As a warrior, being seriously injured is not a reason to be unable to fight again. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.